UK. It was a stark contrast to the public showdown with Donald Trump on Friday. Kurt Volker, a former US Special Representative to Kyiv, says the Prime Minister's in a good position to help restore relations.
It is good for Europe and Ukraine to be working together, but frankly, we need the United States to be part of that as well, or else we're not going to be showing a very strong front to Vladimir Putin. We need to keep the entire transatlantic community and Ukraine together if we're going to stop this war and prevent the next one.
Israel says it supports plans to extend the ceasefire in Gaza. A proposal put forward by the US would see a truce extended until the middle of April. Doctors are hoping to determine how Friday's coughing fit affected the Pope's general health. He inhaled vomit that needed draining. The Vatican says the pontiff had no new signs of infection yesterday. Train fares in England and Wales are going up by about 4.6% from today. Season tickets and some off-peak returns are affected, with the price of most rail cards increasing by £5. Preston are into the quarter-finals of the FA Cup for the first time in 59 years. They beat Burnley 3-0 to progress. Boss Paul Heckingbottom can't believe they've not reached the last 8 since 1966.
It's a big deal because I didn't realise that record until this week. It's a big deal for the club, fans. I found it hard to believe a club with this history and the teams that Preston have had over the years.
Manchester City survived a scare before getting past Plymouth 3-1. In the Scottish Premiership, Rangers lost 2-1 at home to Motherwell. And it's been a Brit Awards for Charlie XCX. The 32-year-old picked up 5 trophies, including Best Album and Best Artist. That's the latest. From Sky News, I'm Connor Sefton.
And a very good morning to you. It's just gone 2 minutes past 6 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 2nd of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show this Sunday on Talk, where we're on DAB+. On your smart speaker, we're on YouTube. Yes, you can watch us in the studio. And we're on your connected device live from the news building here in London with me, James Max. Now, sitting in for a poorly David Bull. He's going to be back next weekend, apparently. Anyway, I'm with you until 10 o'clock this morning. Now, this morning, I'm going to be joined by consultant psychiatrist and broadcaster Raj P. He's going to be reviewing the papers with me. We'll be discussing President Zelensky being welcomed, literally, with open arms to number 10. Great news. Also, Rachel Reeves talking of great news. Oh, she's found a few billion quid. Can't find the money to make sure that we're looking after our older people in society. No, but she's found a few billion quid down the back of the sofa to give Ukraine and UK defence a boost. Meanwhile, going to be joined by Westminster Commons veteran Gawain Towler and also political commentator Jonathan Gibson to go head-to-head, and we're going to be finding out which big high street name is to maybe disappear from our high streets. And who was top of the pops at last night's Brit Awards. Oh, hang on a second. Bit of an alert here. I wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I would say that presenting this show is a piece of cake, but apparently I can't. It's too British. We'll find out which nonsensical organisation is wasting your money, telling you what you can and cannot say. Plus, of course, the phone lines are open. Yes, we're going to be taking a look at all the big stories and getting you involved. I want to know from you this morning, where should the UK's priorities lie? We've heard what happened in the Oval Office. We're hearing what's happening here in the UK. Big conference taking place on the future of Ukraine. But where should the UK's priorities lie? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number on that. Meanwhile, of course, I'm sure you're going to be very excited to hear about some of the other things that you don't need to know. Yeah, this is what happens when you present somebody else's show. A whole load of took comes along. Oh, good! It's Dr. Seuss Day. It's a celebration of the children's author, Theodore Seuss Geisel, apparently, whose works include Cat in the Hat, which I do quite like, to be fair, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Horton Hears a Who.
And he puzzled and puzzled till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before.
Great. I was going to get offended by this one because I was going to be quite concerned that they were just looking at what was in the studio and working with them today and what you have presenting your Sunday breakfast show. Yep, it's Old Stuff Day. It's actually meant to encourage you to break from old routines to try new things. It's a time to appreciate the value of the past and also reconsider what we hold on to. Great, Old Stuff Day. Just have a look round where you are. Oh, don't look at your husband, wife, partner. Are you looking at them going, old stuff, they can go out with the bins. Anyway. Oh, hang on a second. I've got to rephrase this whole show. It's presented by me, Max. James Max. Yes, in solidarity with Daniel Craig. It's his birthday. He's 57.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Yeah, so the English actor, well known for interpreting James Bond in 5 instalments of the movie franchise. Frankly, before they ruin it, there's more stories in the papers about the big deal done with Amazon. Yeah, they bought out Barbara Broccoli and her half-brother, Michael Wilson. So they no longer have creative control of the franchise. £1 billion, apparently, to get that one under the door. Anyway, according to this, Daniel Craig is a Liverpool FC supporter. He's been married to fellow actress Rachel Weisz since 2011. Anyway, that's all excitement. And, yeah, I guess we turn our attention to this morning's question. Where should the UK's priorities lie? Do give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. So I do want you to get involved today, and I have to say I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to do a better job of taking more of your calls and trying to get more of your messages on air. So if you do want to send me a message, 87222 is what you text. Start your text with the word talk. You can, of course, engage on the socials at talkTV, at the James Max, and you can give me a call or a WhatsApp on 0344 499 1000. Now, as I always say, we clear the phone lines, open the phone lines, and if you call me now, you'll get through. If you call me later, it might be busy. So, as the Wendy would say, aka my mother, do it now. Give me a call. Have your say on where the UK's priorities should lie. The reason that I'm asking you is the front pages of the papers, and it would appear as if now is a very good moment for me to bring in Raj P, consultant, psychiatrist and broadcaster. I'm looking forward to the analysis of my complex personality later. Raj, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Well, thank you very much indeed for coming in on a Sunday. Clearly, I mean, do we psychoanalyse your life as to why it is that you're available on a Sunday morning for this?
Well, I will be playing tennis later on. Don't worry, I do have a life.
Oh,
but the clinic is open
there's
early.
A challenge. Okay, so are you a good tennis player?
I'm a very competitive person, so it's a dangerous question to ask.
No, it's not. I'm a tennis player.
Oh, right, okay.
I chair a tennis club.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, there it is. We're playing Max Bingo on this show. Anything I mention, as soon as I've mentioned the dogs and or Frinton-on-Sea, we're ticking so many boxes.
Well, the coach at the club I play at,
yes,
Queen's Club, in near Barons Court in West London, the coach came up to me and said, Raj, I'm afraid to tell you something, you are the most complained about player in the club. Whenever I allocate you to another player.
Why do you think I know that?
Well, he said, you are the most complained about player. I was very, very apologetic. I was upset. Didn't mean to upset people. I said, I'm really sorry about that, Chris. Is there anything I'm doing on the court that's annoying people? Let me know now and I'll stop doing it straight away. He said, there is something you're doing on the court that's annoying people. I'll tell you what it is. You are winning. They don't like that. Please try and win a bit less. So I've been trying to rein that in a bit.
Yeah, I have a feeling that you might have told me off on one of those courts once, but I'm going to... I'll just leave that hanging there as we talk about perhaps the clothing that one should wear on courts at Queen's, but that's OK. It's all right. It's fine. Meanwhile, let's deal with the front pages. The Mail. Now stop the state visit for bully Trump, they say. Donald Trump's state visit to Britain should be shelved in the wake of his astonishing White House tirade against President Zelensky. I mean, I wasn't impressed by what Donald Trump did or said or how it was done, and in particular I was concerned about J.D. Vance. But I think if anybody who understands Donald Trump understands his modus operandi...
Probably his own psychiatrist doesn't understand him, anyway.
He probably doesn't. But you see, I took the view yesterday that he saw a man who was extremely popular. So, for example, you saw how President Zelensky was welcomed here, cheers and applause and various things, and a hug outside Downing Street and all that stuff. And that's what he's used to. He's used to getting standing ovations and various other things. So Donald Trump knows that he's very popular and very successful, but also sticking his heels in. When you have that and you are trying to broker a deal where you are going to have people on both sides, if you want to get a peace deal moving, he knows that he's got to have a sort of tantrum before he can bring people back to the table. Is that me giving Donald Trump perhaps too much credit, or the fact that J.D. Vance just doesn't understand European politics and was making some really rather crass remarks?
Well, what we saw in this extraordinary press conference was something we'd never seen before. We'd never seen world leaders have such an emotional fight, like a barroom brawl. Sometimes when I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, is this the Oval Office or an outpatient department? And so we'd never seen anything like this before. But one of the reasons why Trump supporters like Trump is they think it's more real. At least what we saw was the reality of the tension between these three people. Whereas before, what we'd have seen all this going on behind closed doors, then they come out, smile for the camera, publish a press release saying we had a free and frank exchange of views and everything's fine. So people like the honesty of Trump, I think. We saw something we'd never seen before. But some people would say, was it at least honest?
Yeah. And I guess we're still going to be analysing that. But then, of course, the news cycle moves on. Sunday Telegraph, you are very welcome to number 10, says their headline. Starmer reassures Zelensky during Downing Street visit after president's humiliation at the White House.
But is that tactically wise for Starmer to be so welcoming? Because Trump really values loyalty.
Yes, but here's what Starmer's desperately trying to do. We know that on one hand he's trying to appease those who might be, particularly in the Red Wall, excited about the prospect of reform. And he knows that the relationship between reform and Donald Trump is very strong. So he's played the king card, and so there's absolutely no chance that invitation that the Mail says we must stop it. I mean, first of all, that's not going to happen, and secondly, if you understand anything about manners, once you've issued an invitation, you shouldn't rescind it. You should use it to your best advantage. That said, we've also got a Starmer who is still desperately ringing inside about the vote to leave the European Union and would desperately like to find a way to pivot the UK back towards it. So I do think that we're going to see somebody and him appease the European side of things, whilst, projecting and saying, well, I can be the bridge. I've got a great relationship with... I can't do the nasal thing. I've got a great relationship.
Very good. I'm impressed.
Not bad. Not bad.
Scary.
Well, I would hope that that's the closest. I'm always very towards a sort of Michael Caine, but Starmer very nasal. Very nasal.
Yeah, I'm very impressed.
That.
Yeah.
Thank
but
you.
Here's the thing: Starmer and Macron did a toadying thing,
yes,
right, with Trump,
and he loves that.
Whereas Zelensky didn't.
No.
So the question is, what is the right approach with Trump? And I believe Starmer's big move, the big reveal, where he turned into an award ceremony host and pulled this envelope out of his suit, perhaps paid for by Lord Wahid Ali.
I think he needs to get some lessons on that, because it was really clumsy.
I agree. Anyway, so he pulls out this envelope,
yes,
and he says, the big reveal, invitation to the king. Now that Zelensky's been invited by the king, that detracts from that whole thing for Trump. It wouldn't surprise me if Trump pulls up the drawbridge and says, I'm not coming anymore, actually.
It would surprise me. He's desperate for that. He loves that stuff. What he might pull out of, though, is I think we will have a repeat of the Trump baby thing. And he doesn't like Sadiq Khan. I'm not sure many people do like Sadiq Khan anyway, but Trump particularly does. And that's one area where I definitely agree with Trump on his assessment of our London bear. Anyway, Sunday Times goes with a slightly different story. Reeves unlocks billions for Kyiv and UK defence. I mean, isn't it interesting how the government of any colour and at any time can always find money if they need to? People say, oh, we haven't got any money, and then we must grow the economy. And then it's just like, oh, hang on a second, you've got Rachel from accounts in there making all sorts of mistakes. She hasn't got a Scooby-Doo. I mean, the woman can't add up.
Anyway, she suddenly found several billion under the sofa.
But then, anyway,
for arms.
You can't find... Yeah, unlocks billions for Kyiv and UK defence. So this is why I'm asking this morning, and this is why I want you to get involved if you're watching or listening, or both, and you want to get involved in the conversation, because I want to know where should the UK's priorities lie, because it would appear as if the UK's priorities are, if Kyiv needs more money, we must stump up and we must pay more. And you might agree with that, but then on the other hand, there are a whole range of other things that maybe we... I mean, hello, stop the boats! Hello! oh, we forgot that. I'm so sorry. I was getting on my private helicopter. And then, anyway.
As a doctor who used to work in the NHS, I'd have to say that people who may want to give more billions to Kyiv should ask themselves a question. Whose operation should be cancelled? Whose cancer shouldn't receive treatment in exchange for sending billions to Kiev?
True, but then I'd also like the NHS to stop wasting our money. Anyway, the Sunday Express. Now's the time for allies to unite for peace. This is Sir Keir's message. I mean, bore off. Sunday people, hug of hope. Now you've got our backing. Keir welcomes Zelensky after White House bust-up. The Daily Mirror, we've got your back, they say. Starmer welcomes Zelensky. Prime Minister offers full support. Sunday, we've done that. Oh, the Sun doesn't go with the story. It's got a bit of Zelensky on it, but actually it's got a bit of what could be, I would say celebrity, but I don't really know about football celebrity, but it's got a bit of that. Exclusive. Ace has day with Annie, that's, I'm assuming his partner, and then 2 a.m. party with 2 lookalikes. Footy love rat Carl Walker hits the town with 2 party girls 24 hours after the wife Annie flew home to England. I mean, can people party? I mean, the thing is, I was at a party last night.
Are you a married man?
No.
Okay.
Although I am wearing a ring because I do have a significant other half.
Oh, okay.
So no, but yes. So I'm committed there, and so there ain't going to be other activities going on, etc. But I'll go to a party as I did last night, and there'll be plenty of hugs and kisses for other people that I know. Women
were throwing themselves at you. Is that what you're telling me?
Not necessarily, but it's clearly don't know that much about me. But I think we've got a whole range of situations where if people took pictures, and if I do have some incriminating evidence of particularly the photo booth.
Okay.
Oh,
so what are the rules? What are the rules?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then on the other hand, if you are a football star and you're going night clubbing and you're going with people who look a little bit like your wife, I would say that that's a red card, and that's like no. Just don't do that. Go with people who are like either other mates. Fine. You can definitely go out, with your friends and party. Preferably, or maybe not, with people who just look very glamorous and or like your wife.
Yeah, as long as they weren't relatives of the wife. Maybe that's why they look like the wife. I don't know. But
don't think they were.
Okay.
In the way that I don't know. And anyway, royal welcome for Zelensky after White House meltdown. King Charles will hold an official audience at Sandringham. Have you ever visited any of the royal households?
I have not had that privilege. I've been to Buckingham Palace.
But as a member of the public. As a member of the public, during the summer I've been to Buckingham Palace because I wanted to go around there. Tea was great, but very expensive. And I've also been to Sandringham, and where you can go around the house and stuff. And
was the tea more reasonable?
No, but not priced. It was quite nice, but everything was very expensive. I was just staggered by the amount of toot in the house. And apparently it's because the former Duke of Edinburgh, the royal family were given an awful lot of things, and it's the house where all the things that they were given. And you know how if you go to either a charity shop or alternatively like an antique shop, in that, and particularly if they do house clearance, you'll find a lot of, shall we say, substandard porcelain and other items that should simply basically put straight in the bin. Sandringham's filled with that. I've never seen anything like it. They need a clear out in there.
Yeah, but you see, unfortunately, the royal family can't do what the rest of us do. You get a gift that's unwanted, you put it on eBay. The King of Sweden wouldn't want to see.
Can't always do that.
You can't see his gift on eBay, right? It's just diplomatically tricky.
Yeah. But sometimes people give you a gift, and when they come over, they want to see that gift. So
yeah, exactly.
I have a cupboard which is where I put all the toot I don't want.
All the gifts from the King of Sweden?
No, all the gifts that have to come out on occasion when certainly either family or other members come to say, oh, it's such a beautiful item, look at this. It's pride place. Back in the cupboard when you're gone. Right, 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number if you want to get involved in the conversation. How would you rate Keir Starmer's performance in the recent days, but also where should the UK's priorities lie? What should we be focusing on? Because there are so many things that our nation needs to focus on. Raj has touched on the fact that the health service needs particular help. Are you going to cancel people's operations because we've got to spend more money on Keir? They do take the view that if you can't secure your borders, then is anything else worth spending money on? So maybe we do need to reappropriate funds elsewhere. But where should the UK's priorities lie is what I'm asking you. The telephone number is 0344 499 1000, and we take your calls and go through more stories with Raj. That's next on Talk.
President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance were absolutely in the right. And I think Zelensky took some blows, and he deserved all of them.
Over the past 3 years, I think he has been raised onto a pedestal, a sort of beatification process. And I'm quite pleased to see him knocked off that. That said, you know, I think I don't want Ukraine to be left all on its own.
No, that
seems to be what Trump is threatening now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes past 6 o'clock is the time. It's me, James Max, with you till 10, and talking to you about where should the UK's priorities lie. I ask you because Rachel Reeves has found some more money to either point directly at Kyiv or indeed at our defence. She seems to have found that money. The question is, with so many things on that to-do list, well, is this the top of the list? Where should the UK's priorities lie is what I'm asking you. 0344 499 1000. I promised I'd come to your calls, and here we go. Ian is in Ayrshire. Ian, good morning.
Good morning, James. I'd like to talk in regards to Trump and Zelensky's outburst the other day. Zelensky doesn't realise the way he's going at the moment, he's going to start and cause World War III. Trump was trying to tell him that in the last 9 minutes of that meeting that they had. And Zelensky...
But do you really believe that? I mean, whilst I don't necessarily think that meeting went well or to plan, do you think it really starts World War III?
Well, if Zelensky keeps going the way he's doing, he's going to push Putin into a corner. And who knows what could happen. And that's the last thing Trump wants, is nuclear warheads heading over the continent, America and Europe. And Stammer, in his way this yesterday, cozying up to Zelensky, and
so do you think that Keir Starmer shouldn't be welcoming President Zelensky in the way that he has done?
He shouldn't really, because he hasn't got the experience being a world leader.
Well, hang on, there's Donald Trump. I mean, OK, so Donald Trump was president for 4 years and then got voted out and then back in and all this stuff. But then on the other hand, what about this? I would, yeah, but hang on a second, Ian. I would take the view that what the spat in the White House really indicates is that we in the UK and in Europe, if we want to defend our borders, we might be able to rely on US assistance, but maybe we shouldn't be relying to the extent that we are. And in fact, what Donald Trump is telling us, you in Europe, fine, you know, we get it, we see our enemies, but if you're going to rely on us to provide your security, think again. You know, make America great again requires America to focus on itself, which is why I'm asking where the UK's priorities should lie. We seem to be very happy to send money here, there and everywhere, and yet we got potholes, we've got waiting lists, we've got housing shortages, we've got social issues, we've got too many people out of work, we've got lawless streets, we've got theft going on in our shops up and down, we've got tax rises that seem not to care that the economy might falter, we've got social disintegration, and we've got wokerati who are running our institutions.
Yes, you've said all that. And what do we have? We have Stammer's Communism Party doing nothing at all. They're only focused on their woke communist ideals.
But I think the caller...
Hang on, let's bring in Raj to this. Yes, Raj.
But I think the caller's
he's restrained himself so well, Ian, but hang on, here he is. Here he comes.
So I think the caller's making a good point about World War III.
Called Ian.
Ian's making a good point about World War III, which is that if the war keeps going on and America keeps being sucked in and we keep being sucked in, there comes a point sooner or later, we all know there's probably American military advisors, right, in Ukraine. All you need is for one of them to be killed, OK, and then America gets sucked in. And then you have World War III. That's one of the problems with these regional conflicts. Right. They have a tendency to escalate beyond the boundaries or the borders. So that's what a very important point the caller's making. Do we want to end up in a World War III situation?
But do you not think that it's already gone beyond borders in the sense that what we're really fighting about? I mean, Ian, I mean, you make a good point, but then on the other hand, I'm sort of surprised that Donald Trump, given the importance of the minerals deal that was about to be signed, and the benefit that would have provided to the United States, I'm surprised that they allowed things to escalate to allow that deal not to be signed. And maybe there's an argument to say, forget signing that deal with the US. Maybe what Keir Starmer should be doing is saying, sign it with us.
We haven't got the army, the money, in any shape or form to fight a war.
But Keir Starmer also isn't that kind
of... We've got the king, and we could do a few hugs outside number 10, and we can probably do, I don't know, a nice cream tea or something.
Yeah, that's about the limit of what we have got.
Soft diplomacy. Come into number 10 for a cup of tea. I'll say.
And sending the king over. That's about all.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you make good points there, Ian. Thank you very much indeed for your call. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Now, the other thing I said I'd do, and I am generally speaking a man of my word, I said I would try and do more of your messages, of which quite a lot of them have come in already. 87222, start your text with the word talk. I am, of course, asking where should the UK's priorities lie. This one says, this is from Alan in Merseyside, Starmer shouldn't say the whole of the UK has the full backing for Ukraine. He should only say Labour and the Tories have. If they agree, I voted for neither and I'm still undecided. James, we knew this lot would be bad, but holy moly, they're out of control. Already we've had a lot of corruption from the front bench. When Starmer made that statement before he got in regarding decency and honesty in public service, I thought I would give him the benefit of the doubt, but how refreshing it would be. But I was wrong. They're out of control. I think if they're given another 4 years, there'll be nothing left to salvage from our great nation. How long do you think it will be before Rachel has to go to the IMF for a bailout? Kind regards from Brian. Please can you tell Mike I haven't received my bumper sticker? Oh, I did see that Mike Graham was sending out bumper stickers, and there was a picture of him putting things in envelopes. I don't know. Do you want me to ask him when I do a paper review with Mike in a week or two? I'll see if I can remember, Brian. I haven't got a bumper sticker. Have you got a bumper sticker for Mike Graham yet? No, I haven't either. I wouldn't want to actually put a sticker on my bumper because of the way that paint is done now. I think that's poorly thought out. They should have done like...
Have you got a bit of obsessive-compulsive stuff going on
Yeah,
here?
probably.
Does it have to be exactly rectangular and square? You know?
No, it's just that actually for the other half is a graphic designer.
Ah, okay.
Anything that's out of kilter. No, it's not good. I mean, the feng shui in our dishwasher. As they say...
And there's no OCD?
No, not with me.
Okay,
look,
all right.
With any relationship...
Okay, here we go.
There is one side of that relationship...
Who's right, the other one's wrong.
No. Who will stack the dishwasher like a Swedish architect. The other half will stack it like a raccoon on meth. I am the raccoon in the relationship.
Yeah. That
I mean,
comes
I
out of
just
left field.
stuff it in.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
I just stuff it in. And the other thing is, one of the dogs has worked out how to open the dishwasher, and then all the stuff comes... Oh, my God. Alan in Merseyside says, James, arresting farmers on Tuesday. Somebody's got to tell this government to stop making decisions as they go along. David Aberdeen says, good morning, James. I agree with supporting Ukraine, but where is all the money coming from? David Aberdeen, one-word answer, you. That's what it's
No, I thought it was a money tree.
Yeah, no. Morning, James. Re Putin, in the words of the Kaiser Chiefs, if we tolerate this, then our children will be next.
That's Zelensky's shtick, and that annoyed Trump. Zelensky keeps saying, if you don't support us, the guy's going to come over the pond, and you're not saved by the pond. And that's one of the things that led to the conflagration in the Oval Office, I think, in the end.
That's a good word, though. Yeah. Are you a sesquipedalian?
I have no idea what that means.
OK. Every day is a school day. Sesquipedalian. A person... It's a kind of oxymoronic. A person who uses a long word where a short word will do.
Ah, OK, that's me then.
I mean, come on, that's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes.
Anyway, you are very welcome to Number 10. Starmer tells Zelensky is one of the stories which does sort of pick out in many of the papers today. Keir Starmer telling Vladimir Zelensky, you're very, very welcome here in Downing Street, and this was hours after the Ukrainian president was kicked out of the White House following a disastrous meeting with Donald Trump. I mean, what I love is that, I mean, these people are flying all over the world. They keep telling us how important the environment is. In Ukraine, they're bombing blue merry hell out of each other, so God knows how much emission stuff that's creating. And Starmer is on a private jet and a helicopter more often than I've had, you know, hot chocolate.
But is it tactically wise to be quite so welcoming of Zelensky just a so short period of time afterwards?
Oh, if you're Starmer, yes.
OK.
Because Starmer is realising that domestically, we saw the latest polls yesterday where Reform have now overtaken the Labour Party, and the Labour Party say, oh, just storm in a teacup, whatever. And Kemi Badenoch will stand there. I think her days are numbered, but that's just me. He will stand on the doors and steps of Number 10 trying to look like an international statesman, because as soon as things go politically bad domestically, we know that on the world stage, that's kind of where any politician who's failing goes. Margaret Thatcher did it, but she did it very successfully. Let's not forget how unpopular she was as the changes were made in 1979. It wasn't until the Falklands were invaded. I mean, thank you, to the Argentinians, that our greatest prime minister of sort of modern times was given that sort of, fantastic response, because had it not been for them and the response that our military put in and the flag waving that she did from Number 10 and on the international stage, well, then she wouldn't have had a cat's hell chance of being re-elected.
Absolutely. A lot of people don't realise that leaders love a war. They love a war for all sorts of reasons, not least because nationalism and patriotism means people tend to rally behind the government of the day. And also a war distracts people from the domestic political scene. So if things are going badly there, then a war is a great idea as far as a politician's concerned.
They are. Now, two things. So Raj has written an article which he wants to talk about. I mean, I would say I'm interested, but I think, I don't know, I'm just trying to give the guy material as a psychiatrist. So we will talk about that in a moment. I think incredibly disrespectful. That unbelievable. I didn't even know what he said in it. It might be fascinating. I don't know. We'll find it. You'll be the judge of that. Anyway, we will talk about that, but also I'm going to take more of your calls. Where should the UK's priorities lie is what I'm asking. Telephone number is 0344 499 1000. We do both of those things next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:37 is the time. I like to think that I know my popular music. However, I am no Kaiser Chiefs expert, much as I like, various members of said band. However, the comment and text that I read from Nigel, if you tolerate this, your children will be next. It's actually the Manic Street Preachers, says Nigel, as does Toy, as does Steve. Great show. Just to say, it's not the Kaiser Chiefs, it's Manic Street Preachers who sings If You Tolerate This. So thank you very much indeed for the corrections. It just shows that you are listening and I don't know what I'm talking about. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Where should the UK's priorities lie? We'll come back to Raj in a moment and his article that he's written in the Express, where you can be the judge as to whether he's got it right. Meanwhile, let's go to Stephen, who's in Spain. Hello, Stephen.
Good morning again, James.
Have you seen the clip on the internet about Stephen?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's fantastic. Just type in horse and Stephen and you will be absolutely delighted by what you find. I'll just leave that there because Dave behind the glass has now got very excited. And if we can, I might have to see if we can show it because it just reminds me of one of the funniest things I've ever seen. Anyway, okay. Stephen, let's get to your point.
Oh, well, basically, I think we've got to be realpolitik here. I like Trump. I don't like Trump as a person. He's got a lot of personal problems.
Does it matter whether you like a politician or not? Because, for example, a lot of people didn't like Margaret Thatcher, but they liked what she did. A lot of people maybe didn't like Tony Blair. Some people liked what he did or not. Nobody liked Gordon Brown. Actually, they didn't like what he did either. Everybody liked Dave. Hugger Hoodie Dave. Everybody liked him, but does it matter whether you like a politician? I mean, you're never going to meet them. I mean, no, I've met some of them.
I agree. Yeah, I totally agree. I don't like him as a person, but I like his politics. It's straight to the point. He's blunt. A lot of people don't like it because they slap each other's backs, shake hands.
It's a bit
the truth.
But when he stands there, I'll tell you. And those speeches he gives where he just does that sort of like wistful look into the sky and it's just like, yeah, it's great as ever, yeah. And it's just like, oh, please. It's like, just say less.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, he wants to do a deal. He wants to end this war. That's the important thing. And the world is split into three blocks. We know the BRICS, the US is looking after itself, and the EU wants to form this socialist state. We've got a choice. Where do we want to be in the future? And supporting this war is just going to make us poorer and leave us as an outlier.
Raj, do you agree with Stephen?
Well, it's an interesting point. Angela Merkel used to say that Europe accounts for 7% of the world's population, 25% of the world's economy, and 50% of the world's welfare spending. So it's, generally speaking, Europe is a welfare-oriented bloc. They tend to spend a lot more than the rest of the world on welfare and benefits and stuff. So there is a sense in which it's different politically to the rest of the world, very much so in that direction.
Yes. So Stephen's assertion that the European bloc and one of the reasons maybe that we left the EU, which people don't like to talk about, is this reliance on welfare as opposed to reliance on self.
Which is
why I had a dust-up yesterday when I said, if you want to fix the educational system in this country, which I totally understand that you need to do, if I was a politician, the one thing that I would do to improve the state sector is to prioritise the cutting of class sizes, because I think that improves discipline, it improves learning, it improves opportunity. And also, I wouldn't start imposing VAT on school fees, not necessarily because I agree in elitism, but because I agree with the notion of parental choice. And parents will choose not to spend their money on private fees in education if the state system is as good as it could or should be. So you shouldn't be denigrating something that people choose to do if they're able. You should be choosing to improve the state system until or unless it almost makes the fee-paying system unnecessary.
And it may come as a surprise to know that as a psychiatrist, I'm frequently consulted by state schools who have a lot of trouble. The political woke system that we live in means that often a kid who's very disruptive can't be expelled. So when you talk about smaller class sizes, absolutely I agree. But schools need to be able to expel disruptive kids, and they can't.
But Labour
and that's
seems
distracting from education.
But Labour sort of said, Labour said spending £300 million on breakfast clubs was a good idea. And whilst I get the notion of there are two parents who work in a family and, you know, the school day starting at 9 and all that stuff, by all means, you know, but if you're a second parent working, you know, we'll contribute to that, because there are other things which are arguably more important, which are going to prove it. And as a parent, at the very least, your responsibility should be to feed your children.
But why not let parents set up their own schools, liberate them to set up their own schools? Maybe they'll
schools
do
or breakfast clubs?
Well, either one.
I think just start with the breakfast club. Anyway, Stephen, is that it?
Well, I was interested in your discussion on education, because I'm one of these people who went through the state system, the secondary modern.
Yes.
Then I went to a grammar school. Then I educated myself, put myself through university much later on after being a Navy officer. So I've gone through all the system, right? And in my day, we had a thing called the remove block at our secondary school. So what they did, they took the disruptive pupils and stuck them in a separate area of the school. Wouldn't be allowed these days.
No.
It was a very disciplined approach, and most of my teachers were ex-forces people from World War II. So we had that discipline in schools, and you could progress.
I think that's an interesting point, though, which is, you know, we focus on teachers and teaching, and certainly I remember that quite a lot of teachers at my school were ex-military, and I wonder whether that is something that there should be more of. Because it's a great way, if you like, to use, you know, the idea of discipline or otherwise. As somebody taught me when I was doing this particular job, I no longer feel like a rookie 20 years into doing speech radio. And part of that is, in order to break the rules, you need to know the rules. And I think that's the same in life. It doesn't. If you're just going to be a rule breaker and disruptive, if you don't understand what the rules are and why they're there, then there is no sense or cognizance behind why you might push against them.
Absolutely. But I also think that teachers need to be able to teach, and generally speaking, they become glorified social workers. They spend a lot of time, my experience of doing consultancy work with schools, they spend a lot of time dealing with social problems rather than actually teaching.
But it doesn't matter how wealthy or not the school is. I mean, you're either dealing with the social problems of the children, or in fact, you're probably dealing with the social problems of the parents.
Yeah.
And the parents, many of them are damaged individuals. We've all seen the slightly over-enthusiastic parent who, you know, their child is the greatest, the best, the this, the that. Pushy parents.
But going back to your point about people who are ex-military teaching something to do with discipline, there's a real question as to what education should be about. Should it actually not just be about algebra, but inculcating a value system where, for example, people learn to be disciplined?
But I think discipline is actually what the educational system should be about, because particularly with the arrival of AI and of internet and various other resources, the things, you know, the skills that you need to have in today's world are very different from perhaps when you and I were growing up, where just knowledge, if you like, that basically having Google in your brain was what you needed. Of course, you don't need that anymore, but what you need is you need analytical skills, you need an ability to get off your rear end to go and do stuff, and an ability to be able to interact with others, an ability to, yes, be polite and have manners, but also to know where to stand up for yourself or indeed for others.
And it may be that in a world where there's Google and AI, because there's a sense in which people are becoming lazy and actually maybe becoming more stupid because they stop thinking and they just rely on ChatGPT and AI.
No, I think there were always stupid people.
Okay. But are they becoming more stupid?
Yes, but the thing is, it's because of the you know, arrival of social and digital media. I mean, as I see some of these influencers, as they so-called, and some of the things that get stuck into my algorithms, and I'm thinking, how on earth did anybody let you out? It's just like you can't string a sentence together. You know, you're making a living off just nonsensical nonsense and rubbish. Having said that, I do enjoy some of the stuff I see. So there's a chef, so he's an American chef, and he critiques what people are doing online, you know, with some of their cooking. And he's sarcastic, and he uses quite a lot of bad language, and he's just very funny.
But he's an educated chef. He knows what he's talking about. That's a crucial point.
He does. And sometimes he'll review and he go, oh yeah, that's good. I'll give that an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, whatever. And then, you know, there's this sort of like American mom, as they call her, mom. And and she's there and she's cooking utter dog poo. And I love his responses and reactions to, you know, she'll get a can of, you know, pre-made soup, and then she'll get frozen vegetables, and then she'll get a whole load of other, like, toot and horrible processed meat and cheese out of a plastic thing, and to stick it all in this revolting tray and then shove it in the oven and go, delicious. And he goes, that is a zero. And it's just funny, and I love those sorts of things. But how people, and some people, get onto Tinternet and do those, no idea.
But because of your education, you recognise expertise. He has expertise, and people aren't able to spot people who really know stuff as opposed to people who don't know stuff but pretend to know stuff.
I've got 30 seconds, so let's talk about this article that you've written, because that might be 30 seconds too long. I'm a consultant psychiatrist, it says. These are the 5 mistakes Zelensky made with Donald Trump. Tease us with what you're going to talk about in a few moments' time.
One of the mistakes was it turning up in that military-grade sort of uniform he always walks around in.
But
was that a mistake?
But who else has done that?
Churchill.
Correct.
But he didn't always walk around in a boiler suit.
No, he didn't. It's probably because he forgot to get dressed that morning.
He's one of the most well-dressed politicians of the 20th century, Churchill.
Churchill?
Yeah. One of the most stylish politicians of the 20th century.
Well, it was certainly iconic. I wouldn't necessarily stylish. Anyway, we'll come to discuss the other mistakes that Zelensky made, according to Raj. That's going to be next on Talk.
I would say it doesn't really matter whose side I'm on. In international politics, what matters is might, not morals. And the United States have the former, and Ukraine and Europe do not. And I think that's pretty much where we are. And the second crucial point is Donald Trump has been a public figure for nigh on 40 years. So what I do not understand is that everybody knows that he has a personal touch to politics. I would have assumed that at least Zelensky's advisors would have known that, and they would have prepared him accordingly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
6:51 is the time. It's me, James Manx. I'm with you till 10. Raj P is in the studio with me, and I've been teasing that he's written an article. Raj, so you've written for the Express, so it went online. Why didn't they put it in the paper? Is it because it's too long for the Express and anything more than 250 words doesn't make it?
I think it was a timing issue because they wanted to get it out fast, basically.
Right.
Because of the story breaking yesterday to do with the outpatient Oval Office.
It's not hard. I mean, I've got all these Sunday papers here. They're all full of stuff.
Yeah, it took me a while to develop my argument.
Mind you, they fired everybody at the Express, so yeah.
Yeah, but my argument was that everyone's taking Zelensky's side.
Yes.
But to some extent, did he cause the conflagration? Did he cause the problem?
So number one, you said, did he wear the wrong clothes? And I think there's an argument to say yes, but then people should know that about Zelensky. That's what he wears, you know. It's like I don't wear a tie into the studio, and if you want me to wear a tie, you can ask me if you want, but you probably won't say yes.
But
although I didn't get the cravat memo.
Yeah, it's a one-man campaign to bring back the cravat. But anyway, going back to Zelensky, one of the issues is apparently the conflagration began earlier on, a few minutes earlier, when someone said, "Why don't you wear a suit?" And he said, "Maybe next time I'll wear a costume." Now, costume apparently is a translation issue. That in Ukrainian, a suit and costume are the same thing. So some people may have thought he was being a bit sarcastic in responding by saying, "Okay, maybe next time I'll wear a costume."
Because Zelensky doesn't do sarcasm, but I actually think that it was pretty foolish of the Americans to do the whole press thing before they'd had proper conversations, because I think a press thing, particularly when it's an international situation and also perhaps where language is an issue, you need to choreograph these things well.
But afterwards, Trump said this will make great TV. There's a question about whether Trump sees politics as TV.
I think he does.
So
Trump knows, and this is where we didn't hear from Joe Biden for months. I mean, it's possibly because he was back in the mortuary, in the fridge. Cooling off or whatever it was. I mean, I had no idea. But we didn't hear from him from 1 week and 1 month to the next, hardly. Apart from the only time we saw Joe Biden was when he flew somewhere international, and we all wanted to watch whether he would fall up or down the stairs getting into the airplane.
And he took forever to go anywhere.
Oh my
God!
Like it's like
shuffling gait.
Yeah, I mean, it's like watching episodes of Antiques Roadshow, where they're going up and down, and it's just like boring and nothing ever happens. Whereas Trump is, the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, he will be in our news cycle every single day until he's, out of office.
But the problem is, if he does see politics as TV, and he was a TV star as well as being a businessman. So one of the questions is, if he sees politics as TV, to what extent is that about him being a narcissist? And to what extent...
I think he is. Now, is that one of your points?
To what extent do...
But then they both are, aren't they?
Well, but to what extent do other world leaders realise that what you do when you deal with a narcissist is you toady up to them and you flatter them and you say how marvellous they are? And Zelensky made a fatal error of challenging Trump.
That was silly.
Zelensky said, wait a minute, you're talking about a deal. How do you do a deal with a guy who you can't do a deal with because he keeps breaking deals? And that annoyed Trump and J.D. Vance because they were getting a sense in which Zelensky was saying to the author of a book called The Art of the Deal, you can't make a deal. And that was a bit of a challenge and maybe a diplomatic error at Zelensky's side.
So, and in terms of, the reading into the room of what's happened at number 10, I mean, all the hugging, was Starmer basically giving a message to the Oval Office and to Trump saying, look, I know that I came over and I offered you this lovely thing and choreographed all that, but actually this is what you should be doing with this individual, and I'm going to... Starmer hasn't done a hug and a welcome like that since... forever. So that was a very deliberate move.
But strategically, does Starmer think moves ahead? I don't think he does. I think he thinks about the first move, which is it'll be a great press opportunity. Everyone's really on this story because of what happened in the Oval Office. So I'll hug Zelensky and I'll be on the front pages of newspapers and I won't be in trouble for the first time in a long time. I think that's all he thought.
Right. Let's go to Peter, who's in Croydon. Peter?
Hello, James. Yes, I totally agree with Raj. I can't believe how many people have been conned by Zelensky. He's driven a wedge between Europe and Trump.
Conned by Zelensky? So, Zelensky had his country invaded.
Well, Well, that's beside the point, James.
Oh, so, no, it's not, Peter. Out of all the things that you could say to bolster your argument, that is the least strong argument.
I think it's a very clever argument. Besides the point.
Well, I think...
So, hang on a second. So, whether you like it, Keir Starmer. So, well, our country's just been invaded, but I'm just going to sit on the sidelines because some more breakfast clubs need to be done, so I'll do those elsewhere. I mean, if that happened, Peter, no, if somebody... Look, we're all getting upset because we've got small boats arriving every 5.5 seconds with more people invading our country. We're getting cross and upset that nobody's doing anything about it. Zelensky had tanks rolling across his borders from Russia. He responded. I actually think he did a very good job.
Yeah. Well...
Yes, I do. Everybody else thought he was going to, fall away within 3 days, and Russia was going to, they were in Ukraine, they were going to be speaking Russian across them.
But Zelensky's manipulation is, you've got to give us money, you've got to help us fight this war, because if you don't, Putin's coming after you.
Yes.
And he was selling that, and Trump wasn't buying.
No, Trump wasn't buying that one. I mean, if you told me that, Peter, I would have thought that maybe you were onto something, but you didn't.
No, but James, wasn't he? He was more out the country with his begging bowl.
Yes, because he hasn't got enough money. He did a really effective job at it.
And yesterday, he was so quick to sign a deal. Oh, thank you very much, Dharma. Another $100 million, dollars or whatever.
Oh no, it's more than that. Rachel's found a whole load of shit. Rachel's found billions down the back of the sofa.
So he's so quick to sign that deal, but he wouldn't sign that deal, which would lead to a path to peace with Trump. I mean, the man knows what he's doing. He's divisive. He's driven a wedge straight down.
Zelensky's divisive.
So, do you think Zelensky's divisive?
Because he's saying...
I mean, never has Europe, or the rest of Europe, been so at one, Peter.
Europe, no. I mean, they're not. I mean, NATO
isn't Europe. Europe has never been so united on an issue. So, yes, I think Zelensky has been clever and manipulative or otherwise, but frankly, if any European leader had their country invaded in the way that Ukraine was invaded, you'd expect them to act. But, Peter, thank you for your call.
But maybe the cracks will begin to show when the Americans pull up the drawbridge and don't fund anymore. And
I think
Europe has to reach into its pocket and pay.
Well, then we're all in trouble. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to get involved in the conversation. Where should UK's priorities lie? Also, we will be turning back to your messages, which have been coming in thick and fast. Some of them thick, some of them fast. 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And if you want to get involved in the conversation, I want to hear from you. Plus, we're going to be turning our attention to the things that you can no longer say, and maybe we'll find out about that horse called Stephen. That's next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 7 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 2nd of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show on Talk, where we're on DAB+, on your smart speaker. We're on YouTube, so you can watch us as well. And we're on your connected device, live from the news building here in London with me, James Max, sitting in for a poorly David Bull. I'm with you until 10 o'clock this morning. Well, he still haven't run off for that game of tennis yet. There is some tennis chat to come, probably from consultant psychiatrist and broadcaster Raj P. He's still here to help me review the papers. Also, yesterday, President Zelensky was welcomed literally with open arms to number 10. And great news! Yes, Rachel Reeves has found a few billion quid down the back of the sofa to give Ukraine. And, apparently it's going to give the defence of the UK a boost. Black hole? What black hole? Anyway, later on, Westminster comms veteran Gawain Towler and political commentator Jonathan Gibson, they're going to be going head-to-head. Plus, we're going to find out which big high street name is to disappear from our high streets. Callum Wells, showbiz reporter at The Sun, he's going to be joining us to talk who was top of the pops last night at the Brit Awards. And I would like to kill two birds with one stone. Well, it'd be a piece of cake. But apparently you can't say any of that because it's too British. The woke army are out again. We'll be talking about that. Plus, we'll find out what Stephen has been up to. Yes, they're bigoted, wiping off the bad language. And hopefully we will get Stephen on air. And we're going to be taking your calls and your texts. So where should the UK's priorities lie is what I'm asking you this morning. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. You can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And you can tweet, X, whatever you want to call it, at talkTV, at the James Max. And because this is David Bull's show and not mine, it means that I have not successfully managed to get rid of what can only be described as a whole load of took. Dr. Seuss Day is today. It's a celebration of the children's author, Theodore Seuss Geisel, whose works include The Cat in the Hat, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Horton Hears a Who.
The whippoorwinds whipped high above the Who town. A trip or a slip, you'd slide all the way down. But this girl had a mission. She knew what to do. She'd invite the Grinch herself, that brave Cindy Lou.
How delightfully bonkers. Meanwhile, not referring to either myself or indeed some of my other colleagues, it's Old Stuff Day. I say with certain music like that, probably have to have clip turns. Yes, it's actually meant to encourage you to break from old routines, try new things. Cheers. It's time to appreciate the value of the past and reconsider what we can hold on to. Cheers. Old Stuff Day. I think that's fantastic. I could do so much better job on presenting Old Antiques Roadshow. Although, I don't know about you, I am a fan of Celebrity Antiques Road Trip. Or even Road Trip itself. Oh, classic car and go find a whole load of things. Antiques Roadshow they can get rid of, boring. I don't want to see some old Doris take something out of her loft and find out that it's worth £3.76. Nobody cares. Anyway, what we do care about is Daniel Craig. It's his birthday. He's 57 years old.
Happy birthday to you.
For the love of all that isn't holy. Anyway, the English actor, well known for interpreting James Bond in the 5 instalments that he appeared in the movie franchise, Liverpool FC supporter, apparently. Why do we care what football team he supports? Nobody cares. Anyway, he's been married to fellow actress Rachel Weisz since 2011. What, is this some kind of achievement that he hasn't gone off with 93 others? I mean, well done. Thank you. Happy birthday, Daniel. But really?
Well, they've moved so far away from the original character. The original James Bond smoked heavily, terrible womanizer, drank heavily, and drove a Bentley, not an Aston Martin, speaking as a Bentley owner. So, you know, they've moved so far away from the original character.
You really are bringing yourself into a man of the people status with your membership of Queen's Club, the tennis club.
We've got to talk about that later on.
Yes, indeed. So Raj didn't realise that he and I met And I'll explain why and how, and why he's laughing awkwardly.
Yeah, very awkward.
It's quite awkward.
Very awkward.
And so, what kind of Bentley do you drive then?
A very old Bentley. I collect vintage cars, so it's very old.
How many have you got?
A few.
How many?
A few. We won't go there.
So is this why? So basically, you take money off people for telling them what an awful state of life they've got, and then you go off and buy cars. Has anybody analysed you?
Well, a classic car is a wonderful thing.
How many cars have you got?
A few.
No,
I won't break under questioning.
Okay, is it single numbers?
Oh, journalistic technique. I'm very impressed.
Well, I'm not a journalist, so that's amazing. All right, talking of numbers, I better give out the number here. It's 0344 499 1000. I do genuinely want to hear from you this morning. Where should the UK's priorities lie is where I'm asking. That's because Rachel Reeves has found £2 billion or more to throw at Ukraine and indeed at our military. And you might say that's important. But then you might say, hang on a second, we've still got 7 million plus people on hospital waiting lists. We've got schools that are not fit for purpose. We've got streets that are lawless. All of these things, and the potholes. So where should the UK's priorities lie? Give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. So let me just pick out those headlines for you. The Observer, I only picked it up first, partly because it means I can hold it for a little time, and secondly because I don't have the gloves. I don't have the marigolds with me to handle such appalling filth. Anyway, The Observer's, mind you, I think it's I don't know whether they've sold it yet. Well, how am I supposed to... He's thrown the gloves at me.
Marigold.
Oh, Beaker's come into the studio. He's thrown the gloves at... Here we go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tommy. I can now handle The Guardian, and then I'll try and see if I can pick up the Mirror at the same time. Right. So if anybody used to work early breakfast, I take my health and safety very seriously, and if you want me to handle things, yes, I'll give you views from the other side, or any side, but if you want me to handle The Observer, then I shall put on my gloves to do so. Royal welcome for Zelensky after White House meltdown, but also victims' Tsar hits out at government funding cuts. The government has cut millions of pounds in funding for victim services, prompting warnings that criminals will go unpunished unless it urgently changes its position. Is that urgently changes? Should you be really saying that? Anyway, the Victims Commission has written a letter to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, shared exclusively with The Observer. OK, well, nobody reads The Observer, so nobody cares. Right, OK, The Mirror. I'll do it whilst I've still got the marigolds on. We've got your back. PM offers full support after White House row.
Full support? How big a bill is full support? I want to know.
Well, I don't know.
How many prisons are not going to be built? How many hospitals aren't going to be built because we're offering full support?
Oh, quite a lot, probably.
A blank cheque.
Sun on Sunday. Carl does the double. We'll be talking all things Sun very shortly. We're going to be joined live in the studio by Callum Wells. He's going to be talking about the Brit Awards. Sunday People, Hug of Hope. Sunday Express. Now's the time for allies to unite for peace. The world stands for a turning point in the battle to save Ukraine, the Prime Minister has declared. Picking up on those words from... Kia. Rachel unlocks billions for Kyiv and UK defence. Sunday Telegraph, you are very welcome to number 10, he says, slightly pointedly after the row in the Oval Office. Now stop the state visit for bully Trump, says the Mail. I don't think they should stop. I don't think they should stop the invitation. I think the Trump's been given.
Really, but I think
you can. But I think we should get on and do it.
Yeah, but the trouble is now inviting Zelensky over to the King's Place. Means it's got less weight when they invited Trump.
No. Trump loves all that stuff.
OK. Well, he's American. They don't have a royal family. And ours goes way back, even before America existed.
And they're off.
They love that.
Yes. The Daily Star, and they're off to Benidorm. Racing fans will save a fortune by flying to Spain for Cheltenham and then enjoying the racing over a few cut-price drinks in Benidorm bars. I don't know, are you a Benidorm fan?
I love Spain, but not been to Benidorm.
No. I'm not sure.
Just came back from Tenerife, playing tennis there, by the way. We've got to discuss tennis.
Reeves unlocks billions for Kyiv and UK defence. Chancellor calls on European leaders to step up at London summit following the Trump fiasco. So that summit is taking place, and of course, I'm sure during the course of the day on Talk we'll be focusing on that. And if you want to have your say as to what is going on, you are very welcome. But I in particular want to hear from you. Where should the UK's priorities lie? Are you happy, for example, that Rachel Reeves has found extra money to give either directly or indirectly to Kyiv. Do you think we should be spending more on defence? I mean, I take a view that we should absolutely be spending more on defence. If you have a look at the height of the Cold War, 5% of GDP spent on defence. You spend money on defence because you hope you never have to use it. I don't think we've got enough troops. I want to get rid of all the wokerati nonsense. You pick the best people for the job. I don't care whether you're black, white, tall, short, whatever. If you've got the skills, you're in. If you haven't, you're out. I also think that we should be using our military more effectively to provide, don't keep them in jobs that they shouldn't or couldn't be doing, and make sure that those people who come out of the military in society, we have a huge role for people to play. And I don't think we necessarily focus on the training or the things that we could or should be doing or benefiting from that. Raj, do you agree?
Well, one of the few things that we do better than the rest of the world is our military. Our army has a reputation for being the most professional army worldwide.
I mean, they do a very good procession. I mean, pomp, ceremony, circumstance, walking to...
Yeah, I was thinking more on the field of battle. They have a reputation.
They don't do that very well. Well, I mean, maybe they do. I don't know. But
people come from all over the world to get our training at Sandhurst. We've trained many dictators from all over the world.
That's true, actually. We absolutely have. Sandhurst. This is the other thing about class and class wars, that the military, because we've denigrated our military in a sense, it used to be very much a sort of class thing within it. And I'm not saying necessarily that we should be pushing for that, but on the other hand, I think we need to restore not necessarily class but prestige into certain roles. And I think we've removed the prestige from politics. I think we've removed the prestige from our services, and I think we've removed the prestige from the civil service.
But also, armies are about hierarchy, they're about discipline, and they're about following orders, and that's why it runs against modern culture.
Do you think I would be good in the... No.
What, taking orders or giving them?
Either.
Okay, right. I think you'd be very good at giving orders.
Really?
Would they make sense? I'm not so sure.
But you see, I work by consensus. So I if something needs to be done, fine. But I spent however many years in business and chairing companies and doing all sorts of things, and I think you get a much better response from people if if you are a sort of dictator. I mean, sometimes you do have to lead by example, which is one of the things I generally try and do. But I think if you're very clear about what it is that you're trying to achieve and very clear with your wording on what you want people to do, people are much more responsive than just barking orders left, right and centre. Nobody likes that.
Well, the last army that didn't follow orders, I think, were the anarchists in the Spanish Civil War. They were allowed not to follow orders and question orders, and they got wiped out.
OK. Right, I am going to open the phone lines. Where should the UK priorities lie? 0344 499 1000. Also, we will turn our attention to Stephen. We're going to find out that within the hour, I hope, if somebody can sort it out. And tennis. So... do I need to explain? So, Raj, the first thing he said he was going to do is that after this, and actually the weather outside is glorious and beautiful, and what a day to go and play tennis. I don't think, and a lot of people, by the way, think that tennis is an elitist sport and all this sort of stuff. It really isn't. The accessibility to tennis is fantastic. I wish we were more prolific tennis players in the UK, but I think one of the reasons we're not, it's quite a difficult game to learn. And once you learn, you've got to keep it up, and it's very precise.
But tennis clubs are a bit snooty.
Some can be.
They are a bit remote and aloof.
The one that you're a member of can be. So Raj thought that he'd never met me before.
Uh-oh.
This is not the case. I thought I recognised both the voice and the face, and it wasn't just because he's been on this station. A little while ago, I went to play tennis at the tennis club that Raj is a member of. And it is a little bit, I wouldn't say it's snooty, but it is traditional.
Hoity-toity.
And one of the things that they're very fastidious about is what you can wear on court.
There's rules.
There's rules. Now, I remember the rule about outside, which is it has to be tennis whites.
All white.
All white.
Sorry to remind you.
Yeah, it's all white. I mean, you can have little flecks. You can have little flecks of colour, but it's all white.
Measurably small.
Measurably small.
No logos. No logos. I'm just running over the rules.
No, you can have logos.
They have to be a certain size.
Exactly. They have to be within regulation size, and particularly if they say the Queen's Club on, it's absolutely fine. And I was wearing my Queen's Club top when I was playing tennis. I was also wearing a pair of Queen's Club shorts. They didn't happen to be white because they were the ones that for the gym, not for tennis. A gentleman came up to me to remind me of the dress code and to sternly suggest that I really needed to check and to find out who was the member and whether or not they were going to be responsible. Because
some busybody.
Anyway, it was you.
club bore. I'm really sorry about that. How can I apologise? Enough.
Well, you haven't. I mean, lunch...
Can I buy you a drink and a pair of shorts?
I have a pair of shorts, and I do have the regulation ones. I was hoping more for lunch. Anyway, that's the story. So that's how Raj and I met. And so if you're wondering why it's a little bit frosty in the studio, when you've been scolded publicly, and then on the other court, you said nothing, because there were youths. Oh, let's encourage the youths, and they're wearing their... Oh, because under their grey tracksuit bottoms and black sweatshirt tops that they're wearing on court, they've got white, but it was a bit cold inside, so they can wear... That's okay. But no, I'm trying to do my best. No.
I can tell as a psychiatrist that you are well over this incident. It's in the past, it's buried, and we've moved on. I can see that.
Yeah, we've moved on. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. A lot of you called in, and we will rack and stack some of your calls, so we'll get those on air very shortly. And I also promised Raj that I would spend some time reading the messages. Sylvia in Monmouth has been in touch and says, "Good morning, James. I'd be very interested to hear what your psychiatrist guest thinks of Vance. I believe that he knows how to press Trump's buttons. Both Trump and Musk have some kind of personality disorder, and Vance controls them both. It happened just after the journalist asked Zelensky why he wasn't wearing a suit, as if that was a trigger for Vance to get the room to turn against the Ukrainian." What do you say to Sylvia? I think she's got a point.
She's got a very, very good point. I think a lot of the press have missed that Vance was actually the key toxic individual, as it were, that made it all happen. Partly because he was toadying up to Trump, and he kept saying things like, "I believe you're not showing respect to the president."
Yes.
So he was stroking the president and trying to cause trouble as a result. I actually think he was one of the main reasons that thing exploded.
Sylvia, yeah, I think you're absolutely on the money. And talking of on the money, Raj, I have a special treat for you. A little bit earlier, Stephen rang in, and it reminded me of one of my favourite ever clips on the internet, and I think we can now play it to you, and I think if you listen, you'll enjoy it, and if you are able to watch on the YouTube, so quickly scuttle to your YouTube, I think this is one of my most enjoyable clips that I've ever seen. Here it comes. Welcome to Stephen.
Stephen! I thought you were dead! Hell!
Stephen is a horse. Stephen
is exhausted.
Is lying down on the grass.
Trying to have a rest.
And this is the woman who's shouting at a horse.
Who
calls a horse Stephen?
He's henpecked. The others know their place. They're all standing up.
It's one of my favourite things ever. Anyway, so that's Stephen the horse.
Yes.
And if you want to find it, I think you just type in Stephen the horse if you want to see it for yourself. It's just funny. And there's a whole load of them. And it's not just that clip. That's kind of the most viral one. But there are loads of them because Stephen has a habit of just lying on the floor as if he's dead. Because, I mean, again, horses don't really lie just like flat on the back. I mean, just... It's very funny.
Stephen has reminded me of many husbands, I think, trying to get a quick lie down when the wife's not watching.
Right. OK, I'll bear that in mind. Meanwhile, we're going to do woke universities and what they're telling us not to say and do very shortly. And also, we'll be finding out what happened at the Brits last night. I can sense you're excited about that.
Yes, I watched it with my kids. I didn't understand a single thing of what happened. All the references, even the language was beyond me.
Really?
Yeah, it was like a foreign language.
Well, Well, that's taking a funny turn there. All right. Well, it's like fun. Really, you'd say that?
Yeah. No, it was very difficult because it's like cutting edge. We're not of that generation.
Speak for yourself. Right. Okay. Well, we'll be finding out what happened to the Brits, and indeed finding out about the woke universities. That's all coming up on Talk.
When we were in the White House the first time, for 4 years, there were no wars. No new wars. Russia didn't invade anyone. On top of that empirical fact, we had what? The Abraham Accords. We were told it's impossible. You can't bring peace to the Middle East. You can't get incredibly divergent nations, Arab nations, Muslim nations, to sit down with Israel. We did it. Thanks to the president, thanks to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And it's as if people don't want peace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:24 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you until 10 o'clock. Raj P is here. We'll get some more stories from the papers in just a few moments' time. However, we've had quite a lot of incoming. Simon has been in touch. He seemed to enjoy my comments about people being thick or fast or both or whatever, so thank you for that, Simon. Good to hear you're listening. I thought you, in the words of Stephen, I thought you were dead. Anyway, I'm pleased that you're still with us. Mark has been in touch and says your Starmer impression sounds more like Zippy from Rainbow.
Oh, or Michael Caine.
Or Michael Caine. I talk my days all...
No, I think it's very good. It's spooky. I could be, in Parliament.
Meanwhile, Anna in Surrey says, James, the problem with politics is shown by starting a sentence with, I don't like Trump, but yes, you do. The self-centering language is infection and leads to the wrong people, Starmer running the country, and a grown man, Prime Minister, saying on TV that women really can have a penis. Replace the word with Trump with Farage. That will shortly be the saying of the moment, says Anna in Surrey. I mean, I think we've gone into a direction of travel there.
That's right. I never saw, even as a psychiatrist, I didn't see that coming.
I mean... Talking of penises or otherwise,
are you allowed to say that?
I don't know. I just did.
Okay.
It was a bit of a sausage party in the Oval Office there, which is arguably part of the
part of the issue. Right. I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing there. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Right. It was a showing off thing. Basically.
I think it was. I think it was like it was old-fashioned male bravado, which was from all of them, and it's just like, can you just stop already?
But a lot of people say it was like school ground bullying because the poor guy Zelensky couldn't get a word in. He was shouted down.
Well, particularly as I mean, frankly, Zelensky's English is better than their Ukrainian.
Yes, but the poor guy couldn't get. When they said, "Have you actually said thank you for all the money?" And then when he tried to say thank you, they interrupted him again. The poor guy couldn't get a word in edgeways.
Meanwhile, Dale has been in touch. I thought it said Winton, but it's actually Walton. Dale's been in touch and says, "Hello, Mr. James Max Clarkson. What we've got..." Listen, I mean, if I can be the Clarkson of talk, yes. What we got with Trump is transparency, as he does it for people. With Starmer, he hides everything, even his MPs, on how corrupt an MP can serve 10 weeks and only do 21 hours. Rob of thieves can't add up and will bend over for anybody, says Dale. Stop overseas aid, says Gary. Medical staff migration only. Care home staff migration only. Zero migration from April 2026. And stop the boats in the channel. Fix our own roof first, says Gary. Even Nigel Farage isn't saying zero immigration. He's saying that he wants it to be a net zero migration policy, which, I would probably categorise and say this nation needs to return to what I would describe as manageable migration, which is how many people can we integrate effectively, and can we be a little bit more choosy about the skills that we want and the people that we want to entice. So, for example, we might need to look at the non-dom status properly again. Even Rachel Reeves has realised that was a stupid error. And then the second thing that we should be doing is looking at the connectivity rules, which is just because you've got an aunt who lives in, Birmingham, does it allow you to bring 93 family members? No, a right to a family life. I mean, I don't know about you, but I mean, I speak to my relatives, but not necessarily quite as closely as that. It's just like, You know, if you come to this country, you know, you see your relatives once a year. There's no this sort of like living in each other's pockets and all that stuff anymore.
Yeah, but also the boats issue is basically a resource issue. We could stop the boats if we just threw more resources at the problem. The resources
well,
look
they're
very
throwing
threadbare.
so many resources at it, but they're doing a classic thing that we do in this country, which is we throw resources at the result, not at prevention. So, for example, we're throwing billions of pounds into the hotels, billions of pounds into the processing, billions of pounds into all of the various things that we have to do, and then the knock-on problems in societies or otherwise, as opposed to spending that money up front to say, actually, it stops. This is how you come in, and if you don't fit those particular things, you're not coming in.
No, I agree. But also, if we're going to talk about the economics and thinking about immigration that will boost the economy, certain kind of skill sets that we might want to attract, maybe who are people who are top doctors or top AI experts, that would help boost the economy. But then we froze all those Russian money assets, right?
Yeah, let's use the money.
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. But also freezing them maybe didn't encourage people to want to come here and invest.
No.
Maybe that was not necessarily
I think we need
wise.
to encourage people to invest in this country, and I think we need to have... I would like to see better financial education so that people understand tax and tax rates, people understand tax take, where money goes. And I'd also like more scrutiny on where our money goes, because I think there's always a view we haven't got money. And it's just like, no, you do have money. It's just that you're not necessarily prioritising or looking at it. And they're trying to justify that all the expenditure is all absolutely fine. We know that there will be an element of fraud in whatever we do. Fine, you have to accept that. You have to also accept that not every piece of money that government spends will be spent appropriately. I get that too. But when you see a pattern of poor spending or wastage, that needs to be tackled.
But Elon Musk is trying to do this in the US, and he's sending out these emails saying, list what you've actually done in the last week.
I think
and he's running into trouble in terms of trying to do something.
But I think that what he's doing is pointless. I think it's... if you are going to cut costs, you have to do it in a meaningful way. You can't do it in a pejorative or a sort of headline-winning way. I think it's...
But the fact that he's doing it that way suggests he's run out of ideas into how to do it.
Well, he hasn't got any ideas. He hasn't started. I mean, this is the man who turned up to a company with a kitchen sink when he bought it. Anyway, let's go to Dave, who's curiously in Essex, because I have opened the phone lines, 0344 499 1000, so that you can tell me where the UK's priorities lie. Dave, good morning.
Morning, James.
Good morning, Dave.
Right. Let's get something sorted out here.
Oh, yeah.
Now, there's things in this country need sorting out.
Yes.
Right. Let alone Starmer trying to sort their problem out with a corrupt government. Still corrupt. That don't end it overnight. They're still corrupt as it was years ago. Right. They had enough money to put their armies and everything on that border with Russia, but they didn't. They squandered all the money and left all the world now to sort it
Who's
out.
squandered all the money?
Zelensky's government.
What do you mean they've squandered it? They've been spending it on munitions, which are very expensive. They've been spending it on their armed forces and training. I mean, a lot of people thought that when Russia decided to invade and roll their tanks in, they thought it was going to be over in 3 days. Well, I mean, Zelensky and his team and armies have done a pretty good job of holding them off, haven't they?
Yeah, but can we have a conversation about whether he's done the best job? That seems to be
Well,
that
who
we can't.
knows?
We can't, because we're putting him on a throne and we're worshipping him.
Oh, well, I'm not worshipping him. I don't worship him. Do you worship him?
Well, the press seem to be.
Well, I think
And
he's done a good
Starmer is.
job. I mean, I think he's been pretty clear and stood up for things, and he's raised money very effectively. I mean, he's a very effective communicator.
Okay, but are they prosecuting this war in the best way possible? I don't know.
Possibly not.
I'm not a military expert.
No, neither am I. And I don't think, I'm judging from what Dave has told me, I'm not sure he is either. Sorry, Dave, the phone line's still open. Sorry, what else did you want to tell me?
Look, we've got things to sort out in this country. Trump
Yes.
has got the dead right idea.
Right.
If you don't like it, get out.
Oh.
And that's what I told the man who come to fix my double glazing.
Oh.
Yeah, he didn't know his job. Get out.
Wow. I mean...
That's as simple as that.
I mean...
You can't...
if you want to tell somebody to get out, I mean, were you that blunt with them?
I was a bit blunter than that.
Oh. You see, that's just not very polite. I mean, you can tell somebody to get out without being rude.
Oh, what am I supposed to say to him then? Oh, would you mind leaving, sir?
Yes.
Oh, come on, James.
I've got a similar story.
You nearly said something else.
Yeah, I've got a similar story.
What, about somebody on a tennis court, Raj? What have you got to add to this?
Someone came over, turned up late.
Yes.
Broke the thing they were meant to fix.
Yes.
Right? And then went away, came back, took several hours longer than he should have done. And at the end, as they were leaving, having been a complete disaster, he said, "Can you give me a 5-star review online?" That's the country we're living in. People want a 5-star review, and it was completely hopeless, the job he'd done.
That's why I don't ask for a 5-star review in my shows, Raj. Dave, what else have you got to tell us?
Well, nothing. Now, look, I just had that chemo. I don't know if you've been told. Chemo and radiotherapy. Now, the excellent service of the NHS in Bart's Hospital is just they go one step beyond. But the waiting list to get there, the time it took me to actually get my treatment,
yeah,
this could be sorted out. It's got to be sorted out because you see people in there I never knew till I...
How long did you have to wait for your treatment, Dave?
Over 6 months.
Oh my! And this is presumably if you're having chemo. I mean, this is serious, and they knew it was cancer. They knew it needed to be treated right away.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Now that could.
So have you had the treatment, and is it proving successful?
At this moment in time, I don't know. I don't know. I've got to have more tests to see if it's spread. All the time, I'm waiting again. You understand?
No, I do understand. And the thing with cancer, time is not on your side. And what we do know, Dave, is that the quicker that treatment can take place, the greater chance you have. But I wish you well with that, and thank you for sharing your experience. I move on merely because we've got an awful lot to pack in, and I am going to talk about work universities and what they've told us, and also there's another story, a sobering report detailing struggles of young men falling behind women on pay for the first time. I wonder whether the pendulum has swung too far the other way, that we're trying to achieve equality, which I do think that you should have, but I think we've papered over the cracks that people who take time out for career breaks for whatever reason, and then thinking, I mean, for some jobs, yes, of course the money should be the same, but maybe, somebody's got 5, 10, 20 years more experience, then maybe the money shouldn't be the same. I don't know. But that's one report that we need to talk about, and then we also need to talk about the British University, who's told students not to say certain things, and we'll find out what we're not allowed to say anymore. Plus, the Brit Awards took place last night at London's O2, and we're going to be finding out all the winners, the losers, the outfits, the everything else. Going to be joined by the showbiz reporter. That's Callum Wells from the Sun. So we're going to be doing that next here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
7:38 is the time. Very good morning to you. It's me, James Max. I'm with you until 10 o'clock here on Talk, where very shortly we're going to turn our attention to the Brits and everything that's happened. However, I am going to take advantage of the fact that, and he doesn't know I'm going to do it, I am going to take advantage of the fact that Callum Wells, a showbiz reporter at The Sun, who has all the Brits Awards news, can perhaps give us some insight into a story that Raj P, who's a consultant psychiatrist and broadcaster, we have yet to discuss. So, Raj, this is in today's Daily Mail, so it must be true. Woke British University tells students not to say a piece of cake or kill two birds with one stone because apparently those phrases are too British. The guidance has been issued in an EDI, Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Awareness module, which is mandatory for all first-year students. Callum, you are of a slightly younger age. Good morning to you. And
good
welcome.
Morning.
Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
Should I be concerned about saying it's a piece of cake to say something's too easy?
No.
Or kill two birds with one stone? I mean, you're a journalist, you write this stuff.
I want to know which university this was.
Cardiff.
Cardiff.
Did you?
No, I think that's a bit too far.
I assume you went to a university.
No, I actually didn't. I skipped the whole uni thing. I did. I was impatient, James.
You were impatient?
Very wise. It's a waste of time these days, to be honest. Waste of time.
So, I mean, students at Cardiff University are asked a series of questions on how privileged they are, including, and then it's converted into a privilege rating. So undergraduates are taught that colloquial phrases such as killing two birds with one stone, piece of cake, or even break a leg, usually don't translate well with other cultures. I mean, we have to discuss the dangers of translation. That obviously Vladimir Zelensky talking about a costume where he actually meant, you know, outfit or attire or suit.
Yes.
This is not because people have poor English skills, although I have to say I think they do. I mean, the younger generation, absolutely shocking what they do with their English. Sorry, Callum.
Is this me?
No, it's not you.
I'm not
picking at you. I'm not English shaming you. But it's just that so I went to a party last night.
Okay.
And the youths were speaking because it was a party for the youths. The amount of tea dropping that goes on, the amount of words and a lot of slaying.
Yes, that's one.
And a lot of bratting and all this sort of stuff.
Well, that's Charlie XCX, and we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah,
with the
well,
Brits,
I thought.
But this is the new.
So what you've just done
lingo,
is
James.
Yeah, you've just laboured my really effortless segue into the Brit Awards.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. That's
I've
fine.
Just cut to the chase. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Is that another phrase that you can't use? Because that might be too.
Oh, really? Can we not say that either? Cut to the chase.
No, can't to the chase.
God, you're going to have to censor me. You're going to have to get
cancel you.
The bleeper ready. Yes, you're going to have to cancel me.
We had to have the bleeper ready for Stephen Zone of the horse. Oh, I love that. Anyway, so in the papers, of course, there's loads of stuff about the Brit Awards. Here we are. Charlie XCX, five gongs. Yeah. I mean, the thing about the Brit Awards is that it is obviously the celebration of the music industry by the music industry. And they do sometimes have a tendency just to hand them out to whoever sold the most records. I mean, I guess maybe that's what they should be doing.
I think every year we tend to see someone who comes out on top. So we think last year it was Ray, and this year it's Charlie XCX.
I mean, Ray is
won
an incredible
5 awards.
Yes.
Ray, I think, is an incredible artist.
Yes.
I like Charlie's music too, so I was happy to see her win big. And she's someone who has been around for quite a while, I would say, about 10 years or more actually. But she's kind of been in the background and hasn't had her moment yet. So last year was her big year. She came out with the Brat album and everyone loved it. So I'm really happy for her that it's been recognised.
Storm Z won a gong as well.
Storm Z, yeah.
Okay. Because Storm Z has
you got that wrong.
Storm Z has done a deal with the Golden Arches. I mean, are people thinking that he's just sold out because you can have a Storm Z meal?
Well, I think the thing is, with the music industry, you make so little money from streaming. A lot of artists have to work with brands and have to
Very true.
get these
I mean, the
endorsement
model has
deals
completely changed.
in order
used
to pay their rent.
It used to all be about selling records.
Yeah.
From the records, you got your money, and then touring was kind of promoting the record. Now,
Yeah.
of course, it's the other way around. And I have to say, as somebody who's involved in a major live music entertainment venue, I love
Yeah.
the live experience, and I love it when you have artists. I mean, for example, seeing Group of the Year, Ezra Collective. I mean, they are absolutely astonishing. If you've not listened to the Ezra Collective, I think people of all ages can embrace
they're great.
what they do.
Yeah,
Fantastic musicians. You know, it's just great. They played the venue that I am involved in, and everybody said, "Oh, you know, this is quite sort of bold and edgy." Well, it's like, yes. But they are incredible musicians. So I was very pleased to see them win. A whole load of people that I've never heard of. Alternative rock act Sam Fender, quite like Sam Fender.
Good. Yeah, we like Sam Fender.
Do you?
He's a good egg, yes.
I mean, there weren't any sort of issues at the Brits, because quite often historically, I mean, years ago I went to the Brits, and sort of 3 years running, a mate of mine was running it and said, "Oh, do come and provide some entertainment on our table,"
Yeah.
and it was wonderful. And there was always an incident, you know, somebody who got up on stage, you know, the water that went over a politician, the people who behaved
Jarvis
badly.
Cocker did the Mooney, didn't he?
He did a Mooney,
Yeah,
yeah.
did a Mooney. No, there was actually some controversy because Jack Whitehall was host,
Oh,
and
yes.
he kept making some jokes that were a little too near the mark. So there was one about KSI, you know, the influencer who's
Yes.
a Britain's Got Talent judge. He compared KSI being a judge on that show to Stephen Hawking being a judge on Strictly, and that didn't go down well with viewers. He was making a joke about, you know, obviously because Stephen Hawking wouldn't have been able to have danced, and so that was, you know, some people took offence to that, and there was a joke about Robbie Williams and his previous addictions, and he got a guy.
Robbie Williams, I suppose.
Oh, wait, what did I say?
You said Robin.
Oh, no, Robbie Williams.
I mean,
sorry,
Robin Williams isn't there to defend himself. I think we all know that there are
slip
issues
of the
there,
tongue, yes. He got a guy dressed up as a monkey to snort or to pretend to snort lines from one of the tables, because obviously Robbie is played by a chimp in the Better Man
I mean,
biopic.
that's sort of.
Some
But then on the
people
other
were
hand,
upset by
that movie is about his demons, and,
I understand
and he does talk
that.
about it. So that's quite funny.
I understand that.
You're
But,
so
the Steve-
it's
I'm not.
fantastic.
I'm just talking about the viewer reaction and the
Right.
articles we did about it. At
Okay,
the Sun. So
is
there
the
we are.
younger generation just too flimsy about possibly being offended?
Possibly. I mean, I think there are cases like that. We were talking about the university story.
Yes.
And I think that was way too far.
That's too far.
And I thought that was too much. And
Okay.
but I thought the Stephen Hawking joke wasn't nice. Yes.
Some jokes aren't.
Yeah, I get that.
But it's about taking risks. Creativity is about taking
I
risks.
understand what you're saying. I understand.
Yeah, he doesn't agree.
But that presenter...
Callum doesn't agree.
But that presenter, his shtick has become to offend people. That's what he's famous for.
He's not as offensive as some. I mean, like Jimmy Carr really does offence exceptionally
Or Ricky
well.
Gervais. Ricky Gervais.
But you see,
But I find it quite funny. I find it funny. I think I shouldn't be laughing at this, but I do. Yes.
Yeah. No. Well, you see, the thing is, controversy perhaps. I don't find Ricky Gervais very funny.
So that's where we differ, James.
You see, you like
Yeah.
that sort of edgy.
I think it's about the delivery. I think
Right.
with Ricky,
I mean, Jack
his
Whitehall,
delivery
I
is
like.
very good.
Yeah.
I prefer Ricky.
Really?
I do. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can be funny and offensive, or you can just be offensive. And Ricky
That's
Gervais
right.
is funny and offensive, I would say.
Having said that, I don't like Ricky Gervais. The in Extras where he had Daniel Radcliffe, and then there's the whole condom sketch. That was funny. I mean, that was very well written.
But he's also very good at getting a message over. He was hilarious in an award ceremony where he won something and he went up on stage with his fellow writer, and the fellow writer said, "I think we should thank some people." And Ricky Gervais said, "Why?" In other words, he was playing up to the fact they're actually all vain, aren't they? And
Yes.
they were. So he's funny because he's got a point. He's making a point usually, I think.
Okay, all right. Whatever. Hey, other controversial thing. You see, Morecambe and Wise, not funny.
Oh, okay.
Two Ronnies, very funny. Okay. McFly were there. Are you a fan of McFly?
I know some of the songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know some of them.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
like rock royalty now, aren't they, McFly?
I think so.
And then they've got this McFly versus Busted tour going on and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they've teamed up with Busted in the past to make McBusted. So
and
we
where
know
did
that they've got a good
McBusted first take
relationship.
place?
Where did McBusted first take place?
Yeah, where did it first arrive on stage? Almost, people were unaware. And
I
then
feel
it just
like
arrived.
the question is the Royal Albert Hall.
And that's
you
the
are
answer.
Vice President. Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Look at
There was
that.
also
I knew that
there was
was
also a
coming.
band there.
Listen, I'm just doing that because behind the glass they're playing James Mack's Bingo, where all the things that I mentioned,
fine.
as soon as I mentioned the dogs, then we're in for a full house.
Yes.
They didn't realise that I
Yes.
was going off down the Stephen Road, though.
All right then. Yeah. Well, that's a new one.
But there was a band. I was just wondering if you knew who they were. They're a bit obscure now. At the Brits, the Beatles. They didn't win anything.
They didn't. So they were up against. Oh God, I can't remember now. But yeah, no, they didn't win. But it was their first nomination in 30 or 40 years.
How could they? They should really. I mean, the Beatles should win like everything. I mean, I have to say.
He's from a certain era.
No, the Beatles ended before I was born, thank you very much indeed. But I am a big fan of the Beatles. I just think, the music and the tracks, and also I think the fact that they've been put back into our consciousness because of the TV series that have been made, those documentaries which have been made. I think Peter Jackson or something that made the thing about their final album, and then going
the Disney
back,
Plus documentary,
which is brilliant documentary, and then also the David Frost Versus series, which then, the first episode talks about all his encounters with different Beatles over the years. And, it makes you realise what an incredible interviewer David Frost was, but then also how, almost unusual the encounters that he had with the Beatles and what they achieved and what they did.
Absolutely, and that's the good thing. That's the good thing about these documentaries is that they bring bands like this and artists like this to a newer audience.
They do.
Remind people
But where
how
are
much
they?
they love
Where are they?
them.
Because there are a load of people I've never blooming
We're
heard
going to
of
have
in
to
here.
complain to the Brits, James. We're going to have to write a letter of complaint to the Brits there.
But it's easy to forget the Beatles were very controversial in their day. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was controversy. What was it about? Was it about LSD?
Yes, of course it was.
So they were actually in their day offensive to many people.
Oh, lots of people. And then there were the controversies about when they were at the height of their fame. And the documentaries John Lennon talked about saying, we're
bigger than Jesus.
We're bigger than Jesus. And of course, and in America, they started burning Beatles records.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that at all.
Oh, it's fantastic.
No, this is new.
Oh, yeah,
new
go and have a look.
And
it just demonstrates how, the Americans sometimes demonstrate the level of stupidity is absolutely breathtaking. So there was that controversy that then led to them burning Beatles records, and then there was another occasion where they decided that disco was over, so it was like burn all your disco records. And the way that Nile Rodgers, who in my view one of the greatest, if not, why is he not winning stuff? One of the greatest record producers, writers of songs, prolific writers, absolutely phenomenal performer, everything. Chic, yes please, thank you, any age, any generation, guaranteed to be a banger, whatever you do with
yes, yeah, I think he's very talented.
Amazing. And then, when he tells a story about what happened in America because somebody whipped up and said, disco and it's all about the gays and the this and that and the other and it's terrible and it's awful and you must burn it, and then people taking all their disco records. And
then YMCA is a big hit at Trump conventions.
I love the fact that you have a room that is quite often somewhat homophobic, and then they are all doing YMCA. You couldn't make it up. And Trump as well, particularly. It's just like, take you down to heaven on a Saturday night. Let's see how you get on down there with your YMCA. Lovely.
And the way that he dances to it with the little punches, it's very funny.
It is. Yes. It is very funny.
We all dance like that.
You get to
a certain age.
When I get older, I'll be introduced to that dance.
When you get to a certain age, there is a certain level of dad dancing that has to be achieved.
I'm the worst dancer anyway. I can't. Are you not? You guys, I am. I'm so bad.
Oh well. Yeah. Well, it's lucky that you're covering the things rather than necessarily having to do all the stuff.
Exactly. I'm not going to be auditioning for Britain's Got Talent dancing.
So, okay, just summary Brits-wise. I guess I'm more interested in is the musical industry in the UK, is it still strong? Is it still, leading the world?
I think so. Yeah, we've got some very strong artists, with Charlie XCX being one of them. I think last year she was one of the biggest international stars. And you've got Jade Thirlwall from Little Mix, who won last night at the Brits too. She's a British artist, and she's going off on her own with her solo career.
But it's not rebellious. It's not rebellious anymore. Pop music at the time with the Beatles was rebellious. It was about something.
They're rebelling by not rebelling. So there we go. Anyway, we are out of time on Brit Chat. We're going to get back to our conversations about where should the UK's priorities lie. We'll get some more stories from Raj, and indeed, time to thank showbiz reporter at The Sun, Callum Wells. Thank you so much for coming in, much appreciated, and we'll take more of your calls next here on Talk.
When we were in the White House the first time, for 4 years, there were no wars. No new wars. Russia didn't invade anyone. On top of that empirical fact, we had what? The Abraham Accords. We were told it's impossible. You can't bring peace to the Middle East. You can't get incredibly divergent nations, Arab nations, Muslim nations, to sit down with Israel. We did it. Thanks to the president, thanks to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And it's as if people don't want peace.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So Raj P is here, and we must get straight into this story, which is on the front page of Sunday Times today. Young women are now consistently earning more than their male counterparts for the first time, according to a report that warns of a social crisis gripping young men. Women and girls aged 16 to 24 in both white-collar and blue-collar jobs nearly 10% more on average than their male peers, according to the Centre for Social Justice, which is a think tank. It's a report which is entitled Lost Boys, highlights how a generation of young men are facing far worse outcomes than young women in education and beyond. I always wonder about these sorts of stories, that first of all, it slightly depends on which stats you chose. And secondly, when you have a real push for some form of diversity, there is an argument that says the pendulum has to swing the other way before it becomes naturalised and neutralised. I just wonder whether we've lost sight of what we're trying to achieve here, which is, I don't know about you, Raj, I don't want people to be defined or in a job or paid based on their sex, sexuality, age, race, religion or background. I want it on quantitative, this is the job, this is performance, this is how we reward performance.
Yeah, that's true. But I think one of the reasons why women are doing better than young men in the workplace is, to some extent, work has become much more feminine, in the sense that being charming and being able to conduct a conversation.
But that's just being sexist. Everybody should be charming.
Yes, but maybe women are better at it than young men are. Maybe. Possibly.
What on earth are you talking about? Are you trying to carve out more work for yourself because you're trying to make it psychological?
Trying to wind you up.
Well, it's just like, what a lot of... I mean, I don't want to be rude, Raj.
Go ahead.
What a lot of guff.
No, generally speaking, women are more socially skilled than men are. Most women would accept that point, and I think most men would.
I don't.
Well, one of the reasons we had a bit of a falling out in the Oval Office was 3 guys. You just said there was a testosterone problem before, remember? Remember? If it was 2 women leaders plus Zelensky, maybe it would have been different.
Might have been.
So...
But then, have we also not normalised people in jobs? So, for example, people still got very excited about Rachel Reeves being in a job, all first female chancellor, as opposed to, and then when I criticised and said I didn't think she was up to it, suddenly I was referred to as, that I was sexist. And it's just like, no, I would be just as rude, and I have been just as rude about the previous incumbent or otherwise. I don't care whether they're male or female. I just care whether you're good at the job. I will not pick up somebody. I've had a lot of female bosses, a lot of male bosses, and I think I'm pretty good at picking out if somebody's good, they're good, and if they're bad, they're bad. I don't care.
I agree, and I also think it's wrong that we live in a world now where people are thinking, well, we don't have many women on the board, so the next person who applies has to be a woman. And I do think that is going on. People are thinking too much.
But do you think that's because we're 2 blokes and we're upset that we might not get that non-exec board position?
Well, I'm not that interested in attending board meetings. I think they're really, really boring.
Oh.
But
not the ones I chair.
I'm sure.
Minutes of fun they are.
Yeah.
Anyway, Raj P, consultant, psychiatrist and broadcaster, thank you very much indeed for joining me, and indeed for allowing me to perhaps resolve the issue related
Which you
to the
are
tennis match.
over. You're over that.
And I still don't know how many cards you've got, but we've counted at least 6 that he owns. In the meantime, anyway, Raj, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Much appreciated. Now, we're going to be turning our attention to the head-to-head panel this morning and taking more of your calls here on Talk. It's 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good morning to you. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 2nd of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show on Talk, where we're on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on YouTube, and on your connected device. We're live from the news building here in London with me, James Mack, sitting in for Paulie David Bull. I'm going to be with you until 10 o'clock this morning. So, coming up, we're going to be turning our attention to politics, Westminster. Comms veteran Gawain Towler, and also political commentator Jonathan Gibson. They're going to be going head-to-head. We're going to be going through those big political stories. Also, yesterday, President Zelensky was welcomed literally with open arms to Number 10. And the great news is that Rachel Reeves, having said there's no money, having said that there's nothing to be... Oh, she found a few £1 billion. So where did she find them? Oh, down the back of the sofa. Well, we can give them to Ukraine. Great. And give the UK a defence boost, apparently. Black hole? What black hole? But we'll be finding out where should the UK's priorities lie and discussing that more with you. Plus, we're going to be speaking to Michael Mossbatcher, the associate editor at The Telegraph. He's going to be letting us know who's had a good week and who's had a bad week and who should take a week off. Plus, singer-songwriter Talia Storm, she joins us to talk about last night's Brit Awards, talk about the record that we can't talk about on air. Plus, we're going to be taking your calls, your texts, your tweets, your comments and everything else. So, after all the events with the US and indeed Ukraine this week, where should the UK's priorities lie? Where should our allegiances lie? And how would you rate Keir Starmer's performance as Prime Minister? You can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. You can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And you can, WhatsApp me on the same number as the telephone number, 0344 499 1000. And if you have just joined us, I'm sure you're going to be very excited to hear about the somewhat exciting stories that we have for you. Today, believe it or not, is Dr. Seuss Day. Celebration of the children's author, Theodore Seuss Giselle. Works include Cat in the Hat, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Horton Hears a Who.
Who are you? What? I'm the Lorax, guardian of the forest. I speak for the trees. So you're telling me you just didn't see me magically appear out of that stump with all the lightning and thunder and stuff?
Sounds like the Donald. Anyway, something else for you today, and it's not talking about either my colleagues or indeed a whole range of other things that might be afflicting you. It's Old Stuff Day. Unbelievable. Old Stuff Day actually meant to encourage you to break old routines and try new things, apparently. It's time to appreciate the value of the past and reconsider what we hold on to. I mean, really? I say, time to go and get on a steam locomotive. Fantastic. Anyway, Old Stuff Day it is. Meanwhile, talking of old stuff, Daniel Craig is 57. The English actor, well known, of course, for interpreting James Bond. 5 instalments of the movie franchise. According to this, he's a Liverpool FC supporter. Great. He's also been married to fellow actress Rachel Weisz since 2011. So I think that's exciting. A bit of Bond action on the basis that Bond is probably dead. Well, I think he was after the last movie. And, no spoiler there. And the fact that now the franchise has been sold, that Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson no longer involved, is probably the end of the franchise as we know it. Jeff Bezos owns it. And we all know what great taste he's got. For the love of all that's holy. This is why, I mean, if I ever get hold of this show again, like I might be at the end of the month, there could be a culling of that roster. Anyway, 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number to get involved in the conversation. After all the events in the US and Ukraine this week, where should the UK's priorities lie and how would you rate Keir Starmer's performance? Give me a call, have your say here on Talk. Anyway, so if you want to get involved, please do. And I have once again fallen behind with the socials. You've been sending me a lot of messages. Thank you. I will get to those very shortly. However, there is something else that I have to do because according to the powers that be, now is the time for our head-to-head panel.
Head-to-head.
I mean, the production values are just incredible. They're off the chart. Meanwhile, I'm joined this morning by Westminster comms veteran Gawain Towler and political commentator Jonathan Gibson. Welcome to you both. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, the story of the day, of course, it's on the front pages of all the papers. We talk about Zelensky. Reeves unlocks millions for Kyiv and UK defence. There are a lot of people who are going to be saying, hang on a second, you ran out of money. You've told us that you've run out of money. You've taxed us to the hilt. You are killing off businesses because of the rise in national insurance that's just about to come through. You are killing off the economy with a whole range of things. You keep telling us you want to grow it and you're doing everything to kill it off. And by the way, you just found a whole load of more money. So has she done the right thing?
Well, she seems to be claiming that she's going to take it off the interest of the Russian confiscated assets. I don't believe that. She also says it's a loan. Yeah, right. We think we're going to get it paid back. These things, unless we're going to get part of this mineral deal, which would be nice. But to me, it seems it's absurd. The danger of taking this Russian money that's currently frozen in British institutions is that it would be against international law, and we already know this government is an absolute maven for international law. The likelihood is we could take it. We could take it and then get fined and have to pay compensation to Russia for taking it.
But is it? Hang on a second. But is it against the law to take just the assets or the interest? So if you're taking the interest,
taking the assets is absolutely against the law. Taking the interest probably too, because it's not. It's theirs, and so. The danger is we would actually be paying compensation to the Russians to take this money to give to Ukraine, which sounds bats.
Jonathan?
Well, I think under the current Trump administration and current world international order, I'm not sure how much respect international law may or may not have in remains, but I think countries all across Europe are stepping up defence spending because it's absolutely necessary. You know, you're seeing a move away.
It is, but when you have a look at the numbers of what America has been putting into either NATO or elsewhere, it is off the scale. And what Donald Trump has been trying to say, and he may have done it in a somewhat awkward, ugly, maybe impolite way, is basically, you guys are running sophisticated economies that have significant amounts of money. You're going to have to step up. You've got to pay your, quote, fair share. This is something that we keep hearing in our economy when people talk about what we as tax people need to, payers need to pay. Oh, you've got to pay your fair share. He's got a point, hasn't he?
No, I agree that Europe needs to step up spending, but in terms of the US contributing, that is also because the US is the current world hegemon. You know, they have the superpower, and if they want to create a particular international order, they have to be the backbone of it. That's what's happened for the last, 50 years, and now Trump is essentially tearing that away and engaging in some sort of colonialism, taking the assets.
I don't think that's fair. It's hardly colonialism. What they've said, just as they did to us in 1939, with Lend-Lease, which we stopped paying in 2006. This isn't new.
Hang on, the Americans didn't get involved until Pearl Harbor.
No, they did. They sold us on highly expensive and preferential rates, very second-rate naval kit.
Yeah, but
before they got involved.
They didn't do much.
Well, it was quite a lot. So much so we were paying off the debts in 2006.
Yeah, we were.
So it was a lot. It was a lot, and we needed it. We were desperate. Guess what? We've returned away from...
I think you'll rewrite the history slightly. The Americans didn't really get interested in World War II.
No, they weren't interested. They were interested in cash.
And they are today.
As always.
No,
we're returning to a world of power politics rather than politics by vacuous tweets. Having seen all those European leaders send out the same tweet, we stand by you forever, what are they actually going to do? It's going to take 10 years to ramp up the military spending to a point where we're an effective defence against Russia. 10 years. In the meantime, what are we going to do?
So
send the Luxembourg army in?
No, absolutely. I mean, firstly, you are seeing a very immediate ramp up in terms of spending.
This is good.
Which has,
at long last.
No, I agree with you. They needed to ramp up spending, but the problem is when you have this world superpower, which has historically always been the backbone of European security, suddenly we're retreating from this international order.
But Trump knows the power of that, doesn't he? Because what Trump is saying, the thing is that I don't think Zelensky read the room when it came to dealing with Trump. That Trump likes to be and needs to be the most important person in the room, and which he is. But he needs to be told that and reinforce that. Whereas other leaders might have a slightly more deferential approach. Trump doesn't.
No, maybe, as in Trump's approach is pretty embarrassing and shocking, in my opinion. His conduct is a disgrace to what we see as like the liberal international order, which has literally now just died with Trump. What I'm saying is that Trump very much views everything in a completely transactional framework, and actually what he's doing is not best for his country or best for the international sphere of the West, because it's meaning that as he's retreating, other powers are moving in.
The flip side of that, though, is that he does understand that, and he does understand the world order, and he does understand his responsibilities. But what he is doing is he's saying, if I am dealing with somebody who is absolutely steadfast in their views, and I've got to change their views, I've got to basically blow the thing up until we can rebuild it in a way that he would then support it. Because what he has managed to do, like it or not, he has managed to get Europe to do something that they were not prepared to do before, which is to increase spending. So what did Starmer do? Starmer took a reform policy to say, I'm going to reduce international aid and I'm going to increase UK defence spending to 2.5%, which he was not committed to do. He was not committed to do that at all. And then you've got the Germans and the French and various others who are just not committed to increase their defence spending. So by his bombastic and appalling behaviour, he has got them to change their actions.
Sure, but that is in response to an increasingly dangerous world, which is not in the benefit of any of us, you know.
What do we want? We want the war to end, yes?
Well, we don't want just the war to end, no.
You don't want the war to end?
As in, saying that peace should be brought about per se is not a great idea.
Perfect world. Option 1, to get the war to end, Ukraine wins. Best world.
Right.
Yep. Option 2, there's the other option, is Russia wins, not good at all. Or option 3, some form of peace agreement. Those are the 3 ways to end the war. We want the war to end.
Yeah, but the peace
Option
agreement...
1 isn't going to happen with the best will in the world. The Luxembourg military isn't going to force the Russians out of Crimea, nor is ours, nor is the German and Americans. So that's not off the table. We cannot have Russia win. So what is your third option? To stop the war, to stop the killing?
So I'm saying with the second option, there's very different scenarios in which a peace can come about. You can come about in a sense where you simply defer, you stop giving money, and you let a peace, which is essentially a loss for Ukraine. I mean,
so that's a Russian win.
Yeah,
that's
that
a Russian win. We don't
win.
want that.
But that is peace. As in, what do you want? What do you mean by
no,
peace
but
deal?
hang on a second. Yeah,
that's my point.
Yeah,
that you can have a peace deal which is terrible for Ukraine, or you can have a peace deal which is better for Ukraine.
And that's arguably what Trump is trying to do. Is he's trying to say, in order to get a peace deal, it means that both sides are going to have to move. So if he's able to go back to Putin and say, look, I got these guys to move, so this is as good as you're going to get. You can either take it or leave it. And by the way, we'll free up all these various things because he's got the money.
Importantly,
so maybe that's
the mineral deal, which was said during that interview before we saw the 10 minutes at the end. The mineral deal that he was proposing, which was to 50-50, which is a lot better than most international mineral deals, by the way, for the host country. A 50-50 mineral deal would mean that America had security interests in Ukraine. It had economic interest in Ukraine. He was actually giving security
Well, what
guarantees.
he was doing is that he was giving a reason for him to have, whether it's troops on the ground or money, because then, you know, they are involved. But then, of course, I mean, you talk about the world. I mean, the world has frankly always been a very dangerous place, and it continues to be. It's just that perhaps our focus is there more because we've seen what's been happening in the Middle East. We've been seeing what's happening but China has been, you know, buying up huge tracts of land and mineral deposits and everything else for the last 30 years. It's just that we couldn't be bothered to look at it.
And in response, Trump has done very irrational policies from, for example, pulling the CHIPS Act, which is an America First policy, withdrawing from international institutions, which has allowed China to in a much greater sense, capture them. And actually, this deal with Ukraine, you know, whilst in the short term he may gain access to some minerals, a lot of the tariffs and problems around trade are going to lead to problems around the semiconductor production.
Do you think, though, that when Trump decided to talk about, I don't know, creating a Riviera resort in Gaza, was he basically sort of destructing, if you like, this idea, just almost saying to people, it is such a mess that somebody is going to have to do something. All you countries around, you won't recognise Palestinian people, you won't recognise the area, you won't stop this thing on your own. So I'm going to come in and do it and stop it in order to get them to move, to say, we don't want that, so maybe we are going to have to do it ourselves?
I fully believe that he was just completely trolling, just trying to get a reaction. I don't think there was any logic that I could see in posting that awfully stupid video. I just think he was trying to get, you know, a laugh at the ridiculousness of it. I don't know if you guys have a different take.
It was absurd.
It was absolutely absurd.
I think we have to go back and look, touching on the rest of the world other than the Ukraine thing. Trump's big issue is China, absolutely. It was interesting, one of the first acts he took on becoming president after inauguration was blocking the 50-60 supertankers were taking Russian oil to other parts of the world. That was the first act. That's the sort of thing you should be doing. The European Union has been buying more gas and power from Russia than it's been giving in aid to Ukraine. The hypocrisy of this wonderful liberal order is diabolical. It is the wonderful liberal order that's allowed the Iranians to have enough depleted uranium to build nuclear weapons. Not good for the world.
Let's move on. So, Labour must target deprived areas or lose out to reform, says former minister, is one of the stories in the papers today. I mean, I'm sort of fascinated by not only the polls that yesterday, another poll indicating that reform had overtaken now Labour in terms of their success or otherwise. I mean, behind closed doors, I mean, obviously when you speak to any Labour supporter, they'll say, well, it's just a temporary blip and it'll be fine and it always happens. Behind closed doors, people must be breaking it, that we've got real issues.
Yeah, you absolutely do have real issues, and I think this article touches on a lot of truth in which people are feeling increasingly left behind in the job market. You know, inequality is skyrocketing. There's less opportunities. You know, I was talking before about this, about the lost generation, which there's studies about today where young men aged 18 to 24 in particular are really struggling to get a job, to find opportunity. And the combination of this kind of winner-takes-all economic systems where areas are simply just left behind, combined with the kind of historical expectations that men should go out in the workplace and, you know, earn some money and be sort of a protector role, which again is starting to change, is leading to these really bad scenarios in which, you know, young men are just sitting at home playing video games to get that dopamine hit and feeling really alienated from society, and actually
but is that a failure of society, a failure of schools, a failure of the political class?
It's a combination. It's everything. I mean, there's
so
really
everything is wrong. But then, okay, fine. But then on the other hand, I mean, Labour must target deprived areas. It's going to take more than, you know, arguably a generation to deal with the problems that we've got. And also, I think, you know, there are a lot of areas around the country which have been targeted with whether it's hotels that fill with asylum seekers or all sorts of other issues or social problems, combined with high streets up and down you know, the land, which are being, you know, plagued by huge amounts of either rough sleeping or theft and shoplifting, that Labour has got a major problem. If they have just won the election to the extent that they did, with the number of seats that they have off a relatively small base, and they cannot maintain, you know, that level of support, we could see a one-term parliament, couldn't we?
Well, looking at what you initially started, yes, the fact is they may dismiss the reform challenge, but the reality is they're not dismissing it internally. However, read the report, read the thing in the Observer today that we're talking about, Hilary Alexandra's report. She talks about potholes, she talks about things of this sort. She doesn't mention migration and the mass migration that has had a big impact. She doesn't mention the demonisation of the white working class by the establishment and the elite. And she doesn't mention... we talk about increasing the military. Now, who do they want to go and fight? The people they've told are far right wing. These are the people they're going to want to join the army. And they hold them in contempt, they hold their culture in contempt, they hold their history in contempt, and they regard them as second-class citizens in their own land. So no surprise, they look towards Farage and Reform as a voice to speak for them.
Do you agree with that assessment?
I think there's some element of culture. I don't definitely agree as strongly, but I think actually economics is kind of what has been neglected in some of these arguments, where these areas are just run down. You know, globalization and deindustrialization has just really hit these areas, and as a result, they're thinking, you know, what is it I'm fighting for? I can't find a job. I don't have any opportunities. There's nothing going on in my town, and essentially, I'm feeling incredibly left behind as urban areas and kind of the political establishment.
40% said they wouldn't fight for the country, and yet we're going to need to bump up the military. We're in a real trouble here.
No,
if you denigrate everything about the country, if, as you say, everything is rubbish, or as Reform say, Britain is broken, and so there's some sort of agreement there, then how do we turn that around? And you were right, it's all sorts of levels. It's both educational, but it is also... It's broader than that. The commitment to this sort of liberal international order, free trade, keep the prices down, keep wages down by importing 1 million people in 1 year, that has that impact. But Jonathan, you can't talk about low wages without noticing that.
How do Labour go about fixing this? Because if they start talking about fixing potholes and various other things, and they sort of like distract, saying nothing to see here, they're not going to.
Okay. So, in my opinion, there's two core ways. Or there's more than two ways, but if we put this in broad categorisations, there's two ways. So the first is cultural, people feeling alienated from this national community, and I think kind of, and maybe this is where we'd have some agreement, is boosting national identifying symbols, you know, maybe British flags on the national anthem in schools, or, you know, like some more pride in our identity is one way. History.
But they have to, but in reality, they have to stop rewriting history. You've got to stop apologising for everything that we've ever done.
I'm not talking about rewriting history. I'm talking...
No, but they have to stop that happening.
On the same day, we have other things where the cancel culture has torn out our heroes, replaced our... In House of Commons this week, we're taking down the paintings of Drake and Nelson and Wellington and putting Yvette Cooper up?
I don't think...
I mean, really?
I honestly don't think...
How can you say you like the country and its history when you tear it down?
Well, again, it depends. Like, these are people who are... If you're putting up statues of anyone, you can't judge historical figures by the morals of our time.
It's not a question of putting statues up, it's a question of taking them down.
I think they should be in museums, but that's a whole different debate.
That's hidden in a museum. They should be in public display. They should be in the public wheel.
No, but I don't...
They should be seen,
okay, so
they should be taught, they should be loved.
We can talk about statues and whether they should be in the public domain. I think that you have historical figures that have the morals of their time, and they themselves can't be held to account necessarily in the same way that someone...
we agree.
No, but what I'm saying is that you put someone with the historical values of their time, which are abhorrent for our time in some senses, and you make them a national symbol. Is that the sort of symbol and the values that I want to see embodied in the centre of Britain? Some values which necessarily really don't align. You know, you have someone who's virulently...
Winston Churchill. Should he have statues and...
Again, it all depends on the context. I think if you have proper education around both, you know, the good and amazing work he did and also some of the really horrendous things that he did and supported, then I think that's broadly fine. Or if you have some acknowledgement of that in a plaque next to it or something, that's fine. But again,
so we have to second-guess everything.
We have to second-guess everything. We reevaluate everything all the time.
Hold the wokerati. Oh my God!
Terrible.
I just need a little lie down to recover from the wokerati, and then we will have some more chit-chat about trying to justify why we shouldn't have Winston Churchill, frankly, everywhere, which we should. Anyway, that's another story. We will do that in just a moment here on Talk.
They have looked at us. They do know we have problems. The shine has come off, and actually a bit like a sort of big cousin who's a bit more successful, who worries about the sort of, you know, wider family at large and wants them to be okay, who sort of has a pastoral, patriarchal role to play in the greater family. That's what America's doing now, is looking over to Europe, it's looking over to the UK and saying, look, you're one of us. We're kind of all part of the same civilizational development that's been facing a crisis. Get your act together.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
27 minutes past 8 o'clock is the time. It's me, James Banks, with you till 10 here on Talk, where we are going through the big stories in our head-to-head with Gawain Taylor and Jonathan Gibson. We got into a bit of a row just a moment ago about it just all got a bit woke-tastic. I genuinely don't understand people who think that we should judge with today's values on people who were acting in the past, and particularly when, I mean, through teaching and various different other aspects, I think, of course, it's helpful to understand how society has changed. But when people want to take down statues, when they want to start putting up explanatory, things, and you go in there and natural trust thing, and then say, oh, this could be, challenging, or this could be troubling to you, or this could be distressing, or whatever, it's just like, oh, shut up. I mean, really? I mean, Jonathan, do we really need all that sort of like trigger warnings? It's like, so Sky, trigger warning? No, I don't need a trigger warning.
I'm not saying you need a trigger warning in front of any of this. What I'm saying is fundamentally I see statues as something, the values that society embodies, right?
Yes.
If that's what it is, okay? Or did, fine. You can never have, I can't think of a single person throughout the whole of human history, right, that at their context and time would have had values that we would embody as a society today, in totality. Because,
so
as you said, values...
Even try?
That's the point.
Why do we even try? Why do we need little notes?
So
we can work that out for ourselves.
No, but that's my point.
Okay,
you can't have a statue of a person and take their whole policy and everything about them.
So you go up to Margaret Thatcher's statue, and then presumably it was her social policies that people might disagree with. So, for example, Section 28, various other things that were argued for.
The whole lot.
Are you not a Thatcher fan?
Personally, I'm not a big fan of Thatcher, no. I think it was one of... And this is connected to some of the stuff that we were talking about. Maybe we don't disagree entirely on this around globalisation. She was the one that really accelerated globalisation and transitioned into this neoliberal consensus which we've had for the last 50 years, where you've had completely open market. What do you mean fantastic? You were just telling me about how bad immigration was a minute ago.
Yes, it is.
That is globalisation.
But you can have open market, you can have free trade without free immigration.
Exactly.
Sure, but then you just have factories moving abroad, right? Which is what's happened, and this is why these towns and these
well, that's as much because of our daft net zero policies as anything else.
No, I don't
we've whacked up the price of energy, so it's no longer economic to do business.
That was way before net zero. This was all way before net zero.
The net zero stuff's been coming in for quite a long time.
No, with respect, like my family are from Birmingham. I've seen the effect that the industrialisation has happened.
But that was
way before net zero.
Because of levels of union control, because of the impact of the impact of the 4-day week and the oil crisis in the early 70s. There was a whole bunch of reasons. The sclerosis of socialist control of our industries meant that we built the Morris Ital. Now, you've probably never seen the Morris Ital, but it is truly the worst car in history, designed by a socialist committee and deservedly, sadly,
it's one of the worst cars. I think that there are other issues with the British car industry.
Okay,
but I think here's the issue that I have with that kind of argument, which is if you are...
Sorry.
Have you given up smoking? Or
not entirely, but...
Right, well, I would advocate it. I mean, come on. I mean,
that's giving in to the globalists, the capitalists, show smoking, the tobacco industry, absolutely disgusting. You should see the money they put behind it, They pay young people money to write articles in favour of lobbying against, like, revoking smoking stuff, like changing policy. They'll offer hundreds of pounds in order for me to support,
But hang on, wasn't it Philip Morris or was it BAT Industries who this week said that we want to stop smoking?
Yeah, but there's been a backlash to it, and they're paying lots of young people lots of money in order to write articles against that, and they're moving away from it. Yeah,
anyway,
huge
but the woke-tastic response, if you like, to some of this, an inability to understand the connection between immigration or uncontrolled immigration, wages, housing, call on our society and various other things. And then also this discussion about redistribution of wealth and all these sorts of things. I mean, we do have a very redistributionist tax system already. I mean, does it need to be more redistributionist?
No, we don't, because, we tax working people pretty heavily, right? We have high national insurance, and maybe I'll agree with you there. The problem is the people advocating for the reduction in taxes are saying that because they want reduction in taxes for everyone, but primarily themselves, which are the super rich who should be paying more taxes.
Yeah, but the thing is that, here's the point about
COVID.
But here's the point about the super rich is that because we don't have a globalist tax situation and
single world tax,
a single world tax, and because the more money you have, the more mobile you are, then you will get if you make your tax system inappropriate for them. in the way that we've seen with non-doms, if you make it so that they might as well just go somewhere else, they will take their money and they will go elsewhere. So if they do that, then you get a bigger percentage of nothing. And this is the point, is that then what you do is you end up taxing your working people even more and stopping them moving up and having that opportunity to make money. You
to make
just
up
have
the
to,
people
you have
you've
to take
exported.
away the green
So can I respond to that argument in terms of people moving abroad? Okay, so there's a couple of things. The first is most of their wealth is not in the form of income. Most of it is in the form of assets, right?
Sure.
And it's much harder, as we've seen with Roman Abramovich. You can't just pack up Chelsea Football Club and carry it on your back and take it with you to, you know, wherever else you're going to avoid paying tax. That just doesn't work.
So
and
he
you've
sold
seen
it
the
and he took the
ability
money.
to...
Yeah.
Sorry?
So he sold it and he took the money.
No, but again, you can't simply withdraw assets, which is where he's making his money from. And that frees up assets for other individuals in the UK or the government to actually make money and earn money through having those assets, you know?
Yes, but you can only do those things if you have coordinated action and response. And the thing is that if you...
That's what you
but,
need.
I mean, but here we are.
A single global government.
We're not a single global government.
Yeah, but we live in a world. We live in a world.
Assets.
We live in a world which
Yeah.
has encouraged certain companies to undercut others. And if you have a look at, for example, the likes of Amazon or anything else, so we've killed off our high street. And one of the stories today about WH Smith disappearing off the high street. You know, part of the impact of those companies is that we are no longer going to see the sorts of shops that we had, and it's because we don't have the tax system which is applied in the same way to an online retailer as to a physical retailer.
But there's lots of research on this. Companies care much more than just tax systems. They care about how well educated and skilled up the workforce is in the area, how good the transportation is in the area, you know, health systems which can prevent their workers from going really ill and all that kind of stuff, which we've been falling behind on. And you have
why
countries...
have we fallen behind?
Because I would say because you've had this kind of neoliberal consensus for the last 30 years where you haven't invested in public services, you haven't invested in infrastructure.
That is a very lazy way.
We have invested.
That is a very lazy way.
Okay,
hang on a second. This is a very lazy way of discussing something where you are not dealing with the elephant in the room, which is if you are going to allocate money to central resources like hospitals and schools and infrastructure and all that sort of thing, and if you are going to budget based on one population size and you are not going to recognise a change in population, so if you want to have immigration, fine, have it, but you must make the change to your allocation of assets to your core services. We have not had that. Conservatives and Labour have ignored the changes in population and the advice that they've been given. They've been looking at historic data, which means that they are not putting enough into our services. Full stop. So stop using the words neoliberal. It is about numbers of people, money and economics, and they have not explained the connection between...
They have had to do that ever since 1997 with the E8 enlargement, the European enlargement. They have had to do that because they've had to continue lying to the population to get elected and basically denying the vast numbers of people arriving. And so therefore, do you remember, it was 13,000 were going to come and it was 250,000 that did. And people were saying that's not true, but they'd lied and lied, so they couldn't make the plans for a future population. Because if they did so, they'd have had to admit to what they were doing.
Because it was very convenient to them to keep down wages.
But they could not make the plans you're talking about.
By importing the labour
which is good for businesses, again, and not good for...
It can be.
Yeah, but again, you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't say it's all about economic growth from these businesses and say then we need to reduce immigration. But also, if we focus in particular areas, for example, in the healthcare sector, a lot of this is propped up by foreign, you know, by immigrants who have come in to serve the workforce in the NHS, and without it, our healthcare system would collapse.
But there are other reasons for that, because we stopped training our own. We stopped the nurses' bursary, 50,000 a year. Stopped getting the nurses' bursary. The following year, we needed 50,000 imported nurses.
So that's been a change to our model, as in, like, Australia have a similar way, because it is very expensive to train doctors. I'm not saying it's necessarily the entirely right approach to have neglected the services.
So let me go back to then. Labour having to target deprived areas or losing out to reform or whatever else. I mean, one of the things that Angela Rayner has promised is 1.5 million homes to be built between now and the end of this Parliament. Is there any chance that she's going to achieve that?
Look, it's really hard to build homes. We saw with the HS2 the problems, that kind of the NIMBYs, the not in my backyard people who don't want things going through their constituency and thereby force building to go underground or force it to be really difficult.
But you know why NIMBYs exist?
Because they don't like a view of a train station, they don't like a view of like a house which reduces their property. I'm sorry, but when there's millions of people who can't get a home or can't have a job, or, you know, in my generation, I really don't have much sympathy.
Well, I know they don't, but you see, I think that's partly because of a lack of understanding of the planning process and what it's there to do, but also in terms of what value means. And that problem can be resolved. And one of the reasons that there were so many objections to whether it's HS2 or going underground or anything else is that we as a society and a nation have not applied the rules as we should do for compulsory purchase. So if you pay or compensate people properly for a development or something that happens, you will find that NIMBYism will virtually disappear. But when you have, for example, people are seeing hundreds of houses bolted onto their town or village, but they're not seeing the investment in the roads that get them in and out. They're not seeing the investment in the local schools that get them in and out. And they have this, you know, applicable, you know, affordable housing, and then you're socially engineering various different areas. You're changing the nature of population, and so you're giving absolutely no consideration to the people who live there. And so it's not surprising that people are going to use the laws and the regulations to say no, because they don't want the change. They're not going to be compensated. They are paying for it,
and they quite like where they're at.
And they quite like where they're at. That if you bought a you know, house with a view, you don't want to see the view go.
This aligns with my perspective in terms of the transportation, that we haven't raised the money through taxation that we need to in order to fund infrastructure development. And I'm completely with you on that. We need to do better. We need to develop transport and links, etc. However, you know, yes, they like a view. Okay, that is the key argument that a lot of them are giving. Let me give you.
No,
like,
it's
actually,
not. It's a lot more than that. That is the froth argument that is used against them. There's a lot more to it.
But it's a
they
froth
like
argument.
the fact that they can find they can't find a GP.
Price.
They can't.
Yeah, no,
their children can't go to local school.
But how does that affect again someone like building a house in the area?
Because if you're building 500 in a village of 400, then it has a massive impact.
But it's never in a village of 400. 2% of the UK is urbanised. A tiny proportion.
What?
2%.
Yes, but the vast population
is urbanised.
That falls under the 76% of statistics are made up.
It's
I think
not.
you'll find it's about 8.5%.
Research. Just, you know, you're like. I hope disinformation doesn't occur on this programme. I'm sure it doesn't. So if you don't believe me, you can look it up.
I will. Well, yes, but we're not talking about moving people onto the stuff of Glencoe.
No, we don't need people. We don't need that 2%. The fact that only 2% means you don't need to.
No, I do.
It means you don't need to. But my point is, you can build housing in order for people to live.
What are you saying? I thought it was 8.5 or 9% of the UK landmass is built on.
No, 2%.
No, that's not true.
Well, look up. We can research. You saying you're? I'm not true.
I don't believe that.
Look up.
This is where I'm afraid somebody who goes off and discusses evidence-based stuff is just nonsense.
Evidence-based stuff is nonsense. So then, what are we believing if there's no evidence?
You see, this is the thing: is that when you start using a statistic and then bring it forward as a fact when it isn't. You see, this is very dangerous because then you remove all the discussions about anything that makes any sense. But when it comes to dealing with these problems, I think one of the things that I don't think we have enough discussion about in our society is when Angela Rayner talks about these things, she doesn't actually talk about the barriers. NIMBY is part of the reason, but there are actually enough planning permissions already valid in this country to build all the homes that we need. The difficulty that you've got is the tax system doesn't want and doesn't encourage developers and builders to take the risk. We don't have enough people to do the work that needs to be done if you were to build it. We haven't made the infrastructure changes to deal with all that, and as a result of it, it means that the whole process is broken, combined with the fact that the financing model, because development finance is really expensive. If you are a speculative developer, getting hold of finance is very, very expensive. So if the government really wanted to short-circuit that, they would provide either guaranteed loans for developers, and they would probably change the profit and taxation.
But there's also part of this is the impact of legal changes on the private rental sector and people leaving the private rental sector.
Yeah, because they've made it even more difficult to rent.
Underpinning all these problems is mass migration. And if we don't stop that, it becomes a Ponzi scheme. We have to bring in people to build the houses, and then we have to bring in more people to build the houses for the people we've brought in to build the houses, and so on and so forth. It has to stop.
Is there one area of agreement which is that Angela Rayner is not going to get her £1.5 million?
I don't know. I think it is unlikely.
Unlikely.
My grandma, like last month, tried to get a tree removed from her garden. You know, just in the context of planning permission, she had to go to the council of the trees for the local council.
Oh yeah, no, I have to. Yes.
It's like the most ridiculous, bureaucratic, long-winded process.
But then on the other hand,
insane.
if you don't have protection for trees, then you end up with the stupid councils who just decided because of the cost of looking after them, they just lopped loads of trees.
Plymouth
you have
being
to,
the case in point.
Correct. So you have to have these tree pieces of legislation.
At the moment, you have fields with a singular tree in the middle, and as a result, you can't build anything on the field. You know, this is where we're kind of switching, is in I'm becoming the more free market person on supply side policies, and you're kind of suddenly changing.
Are you the person who went and chopped that lovely sycamore?
Yeah, the one down the.
I'm sorry, the one outside. Yeah, it's gone. I'm building a house myself.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, that's
them.
the point. Is that but there are always these two sides to these arguments. Anyway, we will come back and have some more chat in just a moment here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So we've been having a bit of a row about how much the UK is built on, and this is why I'm always very conscious that one needs to be very careful about statistics, because you'll find that people will pick the statistic that suits them in order to push their particular narrative. Jonathan, over to you. So you were saying that 2% of the UK is built on. If you take the very narrow definition of what has like an actual building on it, as opposed to what is built, then of course you might come up with that low statistic. But when you start to add in the roads and the rails and the infrastructure and the stuff around and the car parks and all these things, then you do end up with a figure about well, it's actually more than that, because that's just including wider definition. But when you actually get it, it is about 9 or 10% of the UK is built on.
Okay, so say we even take that, which I think it's 5.9% from what I read, in terms of if you include...
It was 2% a moment ago.
Yeah, that's in I was talking about the narrow definition. If you want to include all this other stuff, but we're talking specifically about housing.
But this is why you have to be very careful about what you talk about.
I am being careful. No, I'm talking about a narrow definition, which is completely justified based on the context of the conversation. Even if it's 10%, 90%, it doesn't change the scope of my argument. There's still lots of room to be built on. And, you know, Ivan can go and travel, and we can travel around the UK and see that there's large spaces of land that just haven't been built on or developed.
There are enough planning permissions permissions to build all the houses we need.
It's so difficult to get planning permission.
No. Why do you need more planning permission when you've already got planning permission? Enough planning permission. You could build 2.5 million houses with all the permissions which are there.
Clearly not, because it's unbelievably difficult to build a house.
Why is it difficult?
So it's not the planning permission, you need other things.
So why is it difficult to build the house?
No, because of NIMBYs, right? That's the first reason.
No, they've got permission.
The permission exists.
No,
permission's there.
No, because they take it to court, it takes 10 years to get through, and by that time it doesn't happen.
Excuse me. The permissions are there. So if the permission is there, why are houses not being built?
No, again, the permissions are not there.
They are.
They're not.
No. They genuinely are.
It's the investment, it's the money, it's all the rest of it that's required.
There's plenty of money.
You are on very, very thin ice.
I'm not on thin ice whatsoever.
Because you're dealing with somebody who does understand the real estate industry and has done a lot of investigation into how many
I've looked into housing as well, because again, it's obviously a very
qualification
profitable
is?
thing. What do you mean? It's not what do you believe in qualifications? If so, I think you should.
No. So I'm trying to explain to you. I'm trying to explain that there are enough permissions, and if you can, sorry, you need to be careful of your microphone. Which means don't go up and start rushing around. Yeah, there we go. Keep the hands down. So if we are discussing planning permissions and we're talking about the fact that there aren't enough houses, what I'm telling you is that there are plenty of planning permissions there. And that is not the reason that houses are not being built. So if you don't look at, and this is exactly my point, if you don't look at the financing, the tax, the workers, the supply, the infrastructure, all of those things, there is no chance that 1.5 million houses are going to be built.
No, the supply is in critical, as in there's much more demand than supply, so you would think it'd be an incredibly profitable thing to do, to build and develop a house.
Why isn't it?
But it's not, because if you enforce the developer to put in too much of a percentage of affordable housing,
too much of a percentage of affordable, they'd be making a killing off of it.
No, they don't, because you don't understand basic economics then. You don't make a profit off it.
You will be making affordable housing. No, because again, like, what do you mean by affordable housing? Like class affordable housing to me, none of it is affordable at the moment. If you go back and you take about the proportion of people spending,
if none of it was affordable, then they wouldn't be able to sell it.
It's not affordable.
To who?
That's the point. To most people. Most people can't
that's
buy a
not
house.
True. Most people can buy a house. The difficulty that we've got is that we've got a younger generation for whom it is absolutely unaffordable. And again, if we're not looking at the specifics as to... Yeah, but there's a huge population where if you take away the value from them, then you are creating a further problem within the housing market. So if you want to get the housing market functioning, if you want to get these things here, if you want to get things working, then you need to have a wider context, which is why, for example, your focus on that narrow piece of data extrapolates and explains the problem that we have, which is you're not going to have a solution to the housing problem unless you take into account immigration, unless you take into account tax, unless you take into account social differences, and also the unintended consequences of the things that you want.
And there's also the regulatory burden, which is significant in house building. There is also the net zero argument. Building a house is highly energy. It costs a great deal in energy, and that mitigates against other things. So the regulations are brought in to underpin the net zero argument, which makes it even more expensive. So if you try and restore, say, town centres, upstairs above the empty shops, there's masses of empty flats, but the cost of refurbishing them to a point where they can be reused is so great because of these requirements.
I think we, in the same way that instead of looking at what we have, we could do an awful lot of provision of supply or otherwise if there were either changes in regulation or again, using tax incentives. One thing I do need to ask you about, though. Undergraduates at university, undergraduates at Cardiff University have also been warned to avoid using a whole range of words. So, for example, they've been told not to say kill two birds with one stone, or a piece of cake, or to use a word like crazy when something is crazy, because apparently they are very British English and won't be understood by other cultures. This is guidance issued by an EDI, as in Equality, Diversity and Inclusion awareness module, which is mandatory for first-year students. Mandatory. Should we have these things? I mean, do we need to be careful of language such as things like killing two birds with one stone?
No, some of it obviously seems ridiculous. I think it doesn't need to be taught that if you have a friend from another country, they might not understand your British phrase. That's not the sort of thing that necessarily needs to be taught on the curriculum. There were a couple of others which I do think makes more sense. Things like, man up, or like don't, cry like a girl. I think that does. I try generally not to use it. I think it does enforce harmful prejudices and stereotypes.
I've never really used either of those phrases.
Clearly, you guys are much more woke than me.
No, it's just,
have you manned up? I mean, have you told people to man up before?
As in, when I was growing up, I used to hear that all the time.
Did you?
Oh yeah. Oh, man up, cry like a girl, stop being such a girl. Like all gendered
when I was abroad, I liked learning local idiom. The idea that we can't lose local idioms such as piece of cake because people in this country whose language is English in their first language, surely they should be enjoying
next we're going to see saying it's a piece of cake is bad because it encourages people to eat too much. But there we go. So maybe we can end then on just a little bit of agreement that maybe we just need to check. I mean, we could save a whole load of money just by bidding this manual. That's a good idea. Bidding the
it's compulsory. They all have to do it.
Fire the people who did this. Get rid of this Cardiff EDI. Get rid of them.
In the last month, they've fired 400 academics from Cardiff University, but they are introducing this.
And there we go. Last word to you, Jonathan.
There's international students that are funding this stuff, funding on university, so, probably making money off of it, to be honest.
So we could kill two birds with one stone. We're just getting rid of all of them and getting rid of this nonsense. And then we'd all be absolutely fine. See, indeed. Jonathan, he's got radical views. Jonathan Gibson and Andy Goentown. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk, where we revert to your calls. That's next.
Ask them who is Russia. They will say that's an enemy. So we need to speak with them. And really, I heard you said, and I agree 100%, that maybe Prime Minister Starmer can be this bridge maker. Maybe President Macron. Both of them have good relationships with both Zelensky and Trump. Maybe Prime Minister Meloni. But we need to find these messengers, and we need to heal this division, this transatlantic division. We can't just take it, to take it for granted.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's me, James Max. I am with you until 10 o'clock this morning here on Talk. I've received a lovely incoming from Francis, who said, I watched yesterday. I won't be doing that again. Oh, well, didums. I was going to do something very rude, and then I thought better not. Thank you very much indeed for all your texts and comments. I will get to them in the next hour, I promise. Talking to you about, I suppose, the big issue which continues today on the front pages of all the papers, where we're talking about the response to what happened in the Oval Office, but then also the response as to what's happened in number 10 Downing Street after all the events in the US and Ukraine this week. Where should the UK's priorities lie? And how would you rate Keir Starmer's performance? That's what I'm asking you. 0344 499 1000. Anne is in Sussex. Hello, Anne.
Hello to you, James. I'm not going to talk about Starmer or the White House. What I rang in about was listening to the young man that you've been speaking to. Yes. And you mentioned...
I think he has been monstered on the socials, given his views.
Yes, and what I hesitated, what I was going to ring about, was the fact that obviously he has been through the education system in recent years and the university. And when I went back to studying at a later age in Brighton and at Sussex, I was absolutely shocked by how strongly left-wing everything was. And all that had been happening in our country was not good. And I really am worried.
And I think that's a really important point, which is I don't want our political class, if you like, to infect our educational systems and politicising them. But I think that they have become politicised, and I think that what, for example, Labour have done with putting fees on private schools has politicised it. I think what is actually taught in schools as well, when we correct and we apologise and we do this and trigger warnings and all that stuff, has deeply politicised our educational system.
Oh, well, James, I was going to say it's too late. You don't want it to infect, but it already has. It's done.
So how do we correct it then?
What I was going to tell you, which the young man thought was okay earlier, was I would urge you and everybody to look up the Lucas Trust. It was the Lucifer Trust. Alice Bailey, born in 1840. The Lucas Trust has a huge department at United Nations, and her 10-point charter for the Western world, which is actually... happens. It's already happened, many of it. It's changed all our values, and the outcome is that the Western world will be diminished. And I'm urging people to look up and read for themselves, because we can't go on the way we are.
Right. Well then, Anne, we must leave it there, if only just to fit Andrew from South Wales in. But thank you very much indeed for your call and pointing us in that direction. Thank you. Andrew is in South Wales. Andrew, what can you tell me?
Hi, James. I was just going to talk about the current events with the Ukraine-Russia conflict and where we stand. Basically, the commentator you had, is it Gawain?
Is it what?
The commentator you had, the ex-UKIP, I forget his name.
Oh, Gawain, yes.
Yes, yeah. Now, I totally disagree with one thing he said earlier, which was...
Oh, just the one?
Well, yeah. But the main one was, and I think this is a reflection on the war in general, is he said, we can't let Russia win. Now, I'm sorry, but in what kind of world do we live in where the death of like hundreds of thousands of young Russian males is, that's a win?
Well, hang on a second. Russia is the aggressor. They are the people who invaded Ukraine. Ukraine is our ally, and therefore, isn't it our job to support them?
Well, yeah, this is going on to my second point, which is, this is fine to uphold, resist tyrants. But the fact is we've lost, I think, nearly 100 billion, which is unaccounted for.
Well, it might be, but then on the other hand, are you merely going into the conspiracy theory world, Andrew? I guess we'll never know. We'll take more of your calls, 0344 499 1000, and continue with our discussion on the big stories of the day. I'm James Max, and this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9 o'clock, Sunday, the 2nd of March, and this is your weekend breakfast show here on Talk, where we are on DAB+, on your smart speaker. We're on YouTube, so yes, you can watch, and we're on your connected device. Live from the News Building here in London with me, James Max. Sitting in for a rather poorly David Bull. We wish him well, and I'm going to be with you for one more hour until 10 o'clock this morning. So, going to be joining me very shortly is Michael Mossbacher, the Associate Editor of The Telegraph. We'll be discussing who's had a good week, who's had a bad week, and who should take the week off, as well as looking forward to the week ahead. No doubt we'll talk about yesterday's arrival of President Zelensky in the UK, where he was welcomed literally with open arms. Yes, open arms at number 10, compared with a rather frosty reception. So frosty is the right word? Argumentative, loud, angry reception with President Trump in the US, of course. Hostile, perhaps. Hostile reception. We'll use that. Anyway, the great news is that Rachel Reeves has now found a few £billion, probably down the back of the sofa in the Treasury. Amazing what they can do when they have to. Anyway, they're going to give the money away, though. They're going to give it to Ukraine. And they might give the UK defence a boost, but did someone mention a black hole? Black hole, anyone? Anyway, if that wasn't enough, singer-songwriter Talia Storm, she's going to be joining us talking about her new single. Well, she's going to be talking about her new single. I dare say she can't talk about what the new single's called. Anyway, I leave that there. And hopefully we'll have some gossip from last night's Brit Awards. Plus, we'll take your calls, your texts and tweets. And this morning I'm asking you about this. After all the events in the United States and indeed in Ukraine this week, where should the UK's priorities lie, is what I'm asking. How would you rate Keir Starmer's performance as Prime Minister? Do give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. Plus, if you've heard anything or all of the discussions that you want to join in on, you are welcome to do so. Plus, I will do a better job on trying to pick up on some of the text in the comments. Joanna, for example, talking about Raj, who was in a while ago, said Raj has classic cars as an investment and to avoid congestion charges. Sharon has sent me about 300 messages asking me why Keir Starmer and various others haven't prioritised knife crime in the country, that's a war in our own country. And meanwhile, you asked where did Rachel Reeves get the billions for Ukraine. She's got the black hole that the Conservatives left, said this one here. Mark says, James, our priorities should be the UK and sorting out the cesspit of the country it's fast becoming. If we had billions just sitting around gathering dust and maybe helping others, but it should be your country first, says Mark in Caterham. That's just a flavour of some of the messages coming in. So if you want to add yours to the list that we'll try and read, 87222, start your text with the word talk, and you can actually better jump the queue and call me. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. And yes, need I remind you that today is Dr. Seuss Day. Celebration of children's author Theodore Seuss, whose works include Cat in the Hat, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and Horta Hoosa, Here's a Who.
I get rid of the clover. I can't. I promised the mayor. I meant what I said, and I said what I meant. And an elephant's faithful 100%.
Meanwhile, rather like the fact that these have to be read out on a sort of regular basis every hour, Old Stuff Day. I mean, no, I say, going to be rather tempted by the music there. Let's all get on a steam train. Actually meant to encourage you to break from your old routines. Try new things, apparently. Yeah, Old Stuff Day, try new things. Time to appreciate the value of the past and to reconsider what we hold on to. Oh, the wokerati could do with a bit of that. Old Stuff Day. Look at old stuff, old traditions, old wondrous things from this great nation and hang on to them. Let's start compulsory Morris dancing. Talking of something which is probably going to be consigned to the history books is 007. Because now that Amazon have now bought out the rights from Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, it means that we're going to see all sorts of spin-offs and God knows what else, and the quality that she managed to bring to that franchise from the very beginning. Anyway, kiss goodbye to 007. But maybe we should see, congratulations, Daniel Craig. He's 57 today. So the English actor, well known for interpreting Bond. 5 instalments, pretty good instalments, I think you'd agree, of the movie franchise. A Liverpool FC supporter, somebody, and maybe that's just because we want to reference our sister station TalkSport. And that anytime there's a big football match, you can go in there. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe that's it. Anyway, he's also been married to fellow actress Rachel Weisz since 2011. So there you go. Daniel Craig, 57, congratulations.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear.
The name's Bond, James Bond.
Happy birthday to you. Ting pong.
If anybody played that at my birthday, I think we're probably looking at either them or me being sectioned. Anyway, all sorts of things for you to get involved in. If you want to give me a call, it's as simple as just picking up the phone. I want to hear from you after all the events in the US and Ukraine this morning that we've seen this week. Where should the UK's priorities lie? Suddenly they've found money to do things that they couldn't find before. But how would you rate Keir Starmer's performance as Prime Minister? You give your critique, you tell me. 0344 499 1000. More of your calls between now and 10. And of course, at 10 o'clock, we will have the joy or otherwise of Peter Cardwell. So he's going to be looking after you from 10 here on Talk. So we perhaps need to focus our attention on where those priorities should be. James Max says this one. Double X they put. No, it's a single X. M-A-X. James should be on Talk every weekend. Oh, well, that's very kind. Get rid and employ James permanently. James was employed permanently, but then James didn't. Oh, this is from Gary. Thank you, Gary. Kind words. Who knows what will happen, Gary? But I was and did do early breakfast for 7 years, which was quite a long time. Anyway, Rob Lane says, during the World War II, America and Canada lent the UK billions at 2% interest. In 2006, after 50 years, we finally paid it back. I thought reasonably that any money we advanced to Ukraine would be loan debt that would be paid back. But amazingly, it's just a gift from Reeves or Starmer. Grok says, oh my God, Grok has said, sorry, you've sent the longest thing. What Grok says about Raj, you can have one. I assume you mean Raj well-known British psychiatrist. He faced plagiarism charges. Oh, right, okay. I'm not going to go into that on air. Good morning, Max. Mike, you can call me James or Mr. Max, don't mind. There are 3 bullies going at Zelensky. The psychological bully, Trump, his gopher sidekick, JD Jr., and the physical bully, Putin. One undermines the other punches. It's abuse in all but name, says Mike. Where is Dr. David this morning? I'm switching over. Well, then, Richard, if you're switching over, then why should I give you the answer, you fool? Morning, James. You sound like Zippy when... and then you've nailed Starmer, says Lisa. Thank you. I think the nasal Starmer's very good. Although it is a bit zippy. I could see where that's going there. After all the events in the UK, in the US and Ukraine this week, where should the UK's priorities lie is what I'm asking you. How would you rate Keir Starmer's performance? Because I think, look, Keir Starmer is trying to tread this delicate line. He wants to move the UK closer to Europe. You can either agree or disagree with that particular stance. I would say that there's no reason not to have a good relationship with Europe. However, I don't want to just suddenly start agreeing with Europe on the things that we left the European Union to achieve. For example, when are we going to learn the lesson that freedom of movement of people caused immense problems and created issues? When are we going to understand that a benefits culture does not encourage people to work? When are we going to realise that when you have extra people coming to a country, you have to build and fund the infrastructure to do so? And when are we going to realise that if you want to build 1.5 million houses, there are actually better and more creative ways to do it? And this isn't about planning permissions. There are plenty of planning permissions. This is about finance. This is about infrastructure. And this is also about provision. That, for example, if you said that one of the costs of the NHS was, or one of the perks of working for the NHS was, if you wanted to, you could get lower cost, good accommodation, which the government owns, and perhaps lets out or otherwise, and you use the cost of building the asset rather than the land. So the land remains separate from the pricing as to how you create the property. You could do some really clever things to provide the housing. And all you have to do is look back in history for the answers for things that face us today. Look at what Port Sunlight did. and Lever Brothers. Look at what Bourneville did and Cadbury. These were companies who needed workers, and they needed workers to have good places to live, and they created them. They built them privately. So if we've got companies, incentivise them to build the stuff. Start allowing companies to offer incentivization to work instead of trying to tax every single bean. And then you'll find people have loyalty or otherwise. I have all the answers. I hope that some politicians will actually listen, because they don't come up with creative solutions. It's like, yeah, build more houses, but, you know, and if you get... I have to say, I agree with Gawain that if you're not careful, you end up with a Ponzi scheme, that if you build more houses and you encourage people to come over to do the work because you haven't got enough people here to do the job, and then there are more people there that need housing, it's a real problem. Anyway, 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Now we need to find out about our week in politics. And I'm joined now by the associate editor at the Telegraph, Michael Mosbacher. Joins me now. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. So, let's start with who's had a good week?
I'd argue Keir Starmer. He's had a pretty awful time since the general election, since last July. But most people see that he sort of betrayed his promises. But what's he done this week? It's not so much the visit to Washington. It's more the announcement on defence and foreign aid, increasing defence spending, cutting foreign aid. It's both the right thing to do, but also it connects his problem. His big problem is the rise of reform, the challenge to Labour, the challenge to red wall seats, and it's got the red. And coming out with this policy shows that he's now gradually getting what people's concerns are, and it challenges the reform votes. Okay, he might lose some votes.
So it's fine that he's got that message, but then when you hear that quite a lot of that extra money that he's going to take from the foreign aid budget and put into defence may not actually end up in the defence budget and may end up paying the Chagos Islands bill, then surely that sends you back to ground zero, because, in fact, you genuinely need to increase defence spending, do you not?
Yeah, you clearly do. And clearly there will be smoke and mirrors. When Tories previously have announced increases in defence spending, they've included sort of VAT stuff on their pay stuff. So obviously you're absolutely right. The actual funds have got to go up, and he's gone nowhere near enough.
But isn't that also part of the problem, that we've got really stuck into this rut of talking about percentages of GDP as opposed to actual amounts? And if you get stuck in talking about percentage of GDP, that amount may not necessarily be rising in line with either inflation or keeping up with what we need to do. So we do need to talk about amounts of money. But then what we're also not doing in this country, because for whatever reason we get bored quite quickly, is we're not actually analysing where the money is being spent and where the extra allocation is being effective.
That's true, yeah. Sort of money wasted on procurement issues. You're absolutely right there. But still, he's at least in the right ballpark. And the more Annalise Dodds, his overseas development minister, resigned over the issue, and the more those resignations that happen, the more the left gets angry, the better it is for Starmer, because he can thereby show that, look, I'm getting engaged in actual people's concerns, not the sort of left-wing activists who predominate in the Labour Party.
So, Keir Starmer, as you say, you think he's had a good week. Just before I get on to some other aspects of the fallout of that particular response, there is a conversation to be had, though, that he went to the White House, seemed to be received very well. He played the King letter invite, showbiz game card pretty well. Donald Trump said some nice things about him. And then he's also been, the place where Zelensky goes after he's had a sort of like a massive bruising, telling off and everything else, and hugs outside number 10 and all that sort of. Will Donald Trump be upset or angry by the fact that Zelensky's been not only welcomed but almost sort of cheered and hero welcomed into number 10 after having that rather bruising encounter in the Oval Office?
He might be, but I don't think he had much of an option with that. I mean, the UK isn't going to change its Ukraine stance. Okay. So I think he had to show support there.
So just before we get on to who's had a bad week, now stop the state visit for bully Trump, says the Mail on Sunday. My view is that the Mail on Sunday, I don't know what's happened to them, but they've clearly fallen off the wagon. And that is just the most ridiculous thing and headline that I ever did see from them.
Yeah, it seems a bit OTT. It seems totally over the top.
But it's also out of step that it's just like, well, why would you do that? If you are one of the few people who can have a good relationship both with Zelensky and indeed with Trump, and you might actually be able to do something on the global stage, why would you possibly consider, just because you don't agree with Trump or you think that he's behaving like a small child or a man baby or the other accusations that come out, why on earth would you remove this soft power that puts us on the global stage? I mean, clearly whoever's editing the Mail on Sunday hasn't got a Scooby-Doo.
It's completely bonkers, exactly. I mean, clearly Starmer found it tough to go to the White House and be sycophantic to Trump. They clearly share nothing politically, but he realised that had to be done. So chucking all that in the bin would just be bonkers.
Who's had a bad week then?
Nigel Farage. There are two parts to it.
Oh.
One is the whole Russia,
I was going to
Ukraine.
ask, where is he? I mean, we haven't seen him for days.
Yeah, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing. If you remember back in the July election campaign, the one point where it wasn't going so well for reform was when the Russia stuff happened, when various quotes got found of him being sympathetic to Putin. And what's happened now with the whole Vance-Zelensky debate is that comes back to the centre of things. So it's obviously very tricky for Farage. Is he going to side with Trump? Is he going to... what's he going to say on Ukraine? He said some things, but not much yet. But it's probably the trickiest issue for reform is how to deal with Putin, Russia, relations on the Ukraine war. And that was his weakness in the campaign.
I suppose so. How do I respond to this? So Tess has been in touch and says, James, you know Ukraine is the most corrupt country in the world. I'm not sure that's necessarily true. I'm well aware that the further east you go in Europe, that there is significant corruption. But there we go. So Tess goes on to say, but we know you have your faithfulness for the government. Dribble, dribble, have a great day. I can't think of many things that I've said in favour of either this government or the previous one. But on the other hand, I do... Am I right in thinking, Michael, that there is a good reason to defend Ukraine, to take the Zelensky line and to deal or treat Putin as an aggressor or the aggressor for having moved into Ukraine, having annexed Crimea back in 2014?
You're absolutely right. Ukraine may well be corrupt. I mean, most of those countries in that area are. But what happened with a clear act of aggression, Russia invaded the country. You can't have countries just deciding to march into their neighbours, seize territory, annex territory. We're back to a world of total chaos. And the clear, unambiguous aggressor here, Putin. And however much corruption there is in Ukraine, that isn't relevant to what's happened. One country has launched an unprovoked invasion into another country, taken over its territory, seized large parts of it.
Talking of invasions, Heather's cross with me because Heather says, James, you are such a hypocrite. There are plenty of receipts from days when you had your own show and put callers down for saying that we should stop illegal immigrants coming in on boats and stop the hotels. You repeatedly stated that it was not relevant and just a drop in the ocean and were rude to callers. I was just stirring it up, Heather. You kind of rumbled me for doing my job. That having been said, I don't think I have been hypocritical. I've always said that uncontrolled immigration, I've always argued that immigration, when controlled, we need to be able to flex it up and down as a nation, and it should be required on need. I've always advocated stopping the boats. I don't think that people should have a way to jump the queue. And I've always advocated and been really clear that when it comes to coming up with the right rules for immigration, we need to change, particularly where it's ECHR based, the family connections and the people who are able to just bring in, loose relations because of some spurious claim or other that they have. So I think that immigration is a huge and massive issue. I'm assuming, Michael, from your perspective, that this is an issue that is not going to go away until or unless the rules are sorted and the numbers come down.
It absolutely won't. It'll continue. It's what's driven reform up. It'll continue to be the political issue, which politicians have to tackle. And unless those numbers go down, that won't change. I was on Farage. I was going to say the other reason why he's also got a big challenge coming up. After Mike Amesbury, he's the Labour MP who was a Labour MP who punched a constituent and then got a prison sentence last week. It's now been reduced on appeal to he's still got a prison sentence. It's now been suspended. But because of that, almost certainly there'll be a by-election in Runcorn. And Runcorn's a seat with a huge...
Who would win it, do you think?
I think that's where Nigel Farage's problem is. It's a seat with a huge Labour majority, but Reform is second. It's the seat which Reform should be a big challenger in, but still Labour's majority is 14,000. If Reform wins it, it's obviously superb news for Farage. It just shows the continuing momentum for Reform. But what's happened in the past with Farage's parties, Reform, Brexit Party, UKIP, is they haven't performed terribly well in by-elections. So if this by-election comes around in May and Reform don't win, I suspect lots of the sort of Farage's balloon will be somewhat burst.
Right.
The whole narrative of Reform could win the next election and writhing in the polls will have gone down. So it's vital for him to have.
Right.
I mean, he may want a by-election, but it's also a huge problem and a challenge because he has to win it really to continue the momentum for Reform.
Who do we?
It's a tricky one.
Okay, so good week, Keir Starmer. Bad week, Nigel Farage. Who do we need to keep an eye on?
Friedrich Merz. He's the winner of the German election last weekend. He isn't Chancellor yet, but he will be Chancellor in the coming weeks of Germany. Got to cobble together a coalition.
Okay.
Germany's got lots of problems, defence, Ukraine, and net zero. The economy is sluggish. He's promised to turn these things around. Europe, Germany's obviously the largest country in the EU, vastly dominant player. Will he succeed? Will he be able to... Germany's sort of the sick man of Europe now. Will he be able to turn that around and make real change? I mean, that's not so much the coming week, but the coming weeks and months. Will he be able to deliver on the promises, which is vital for Europe, or will Germany continue not have an even worse immigration crisis than we have, a more sluggish economy, got really hardline net zero policies? He's promised to change all that, but will he be able to do that with a coalition he can put together? There he is, greeting Zelensky.
Yes, 9, I think, is the answer to that. Who needs a week off then?
JD Vance. He obviously ambushed Zelensky. The problem there is he's repeatedly been parroting basically Putin propaganda. He goes in, speaks to Zelensky, talks about people being kidnapped off the streets and forced to fight, uses all the attack lines of Moscow.
People shouldn't be surprised. I mean, if you look at his history, he's always been parroting that stuff. I'm surprised that he was allowed into that meeting, because I think that Donald Trump, had he been in charge, would probably have got what he wanted. I'm surprised. I mean, I'm sure some people like JD Vance. I think he is. He's a sort of combination between just a buffoon and he just comes across as quite foolish. Whereas Trump, like him or loathe him, Trump is smart. He does his homework. He knows mostly his stuff. He doesn't make many mistakes. Whereas Vance came into and spoke to Europeans in a way that if you could say all the things you like about Europe, but if you come in and you talk about stuff where you get your history wrong or you make mistakes, you're not going to be given much of an audience again, are you?
Exactly. The art of diplomacy is one he certainly doesn't have. It's unprecedented. I think you're absolutely right. If he weren't in the Oval Office, I think the meeting, there might have been some disagreements, but it would have been a much more normal meeting. It was his attempt to ambush Zelensky, which caused the issues. And he doesn't seem to have any sort of grasp as what to say. Look, even at the Munich speech, I mean, he could have said similar things, made the points about defence spending, made the points about free speech in Europe, without doing it in such an aggressive manner that he'll just put the backs up of his audience.
Now, she may be on the front page of the Sunday Telegraph, because you've got some commentary by Kemi Badenoch. Is the fact that she hasn't had a good week, hasn't had a bad week, we don't need to keep an eye on her and doesn't need a week off, and the fact that we're not really talking about her and haven't mentioned her once, isn't that part of the problem for the Tory party, which is, we're talking about reform, we're talking about Labour, we're talking about different issues, and she's been nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, she's now trying to say something on Ukraine and on defence spending, basically saying, I I back Zelensky. Labour's started on the right course. It needs to do more. But, I mean, she hasn't broken through. It's very difficult in a week like this for any opposition leader to break through when you've got such huge global events, when obviously the Prime Minister is the person who's going to meet Trump, etc. But still, she should have had more of an impact. It's an incredibly difficult job, but you're right, she doesn't have the impact. And it's a much sort of sexier narrative to talk about Farage, to talk about the rise of an insurgent party. And because of that, the Tories are losing out. And so she just hasn't had the impact she should have had.
I think that's probably the case. Michael, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. That's Michael Mosbacher. He's the associate editor at The Telegraph, bringing in his view of who's had good weeks, bad weeks or otherwise. Meanwhile, I'm going to return to your calls in a moment. I am asking you about a whole range of issues this morning, but in particular, after the events in the US and Ukraine this week, where should the priorities of the UK Prime Minister lie? Do you agree with Michael, actually, that Keir Starmer's had a good week and Nigel Farage has had a bad week? But also, how would you rate Keir Starmer's performance? Give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. Your calls are next here on Talk.
A little too little, too late. I mean, those are not the comments or attitude that he was expressing in that meeting. And keep in mind that the contentious part, and you and I have been involved in contentious meetings in politics as a lawyer in business. I've never seen anything like this in public and very rarely even in private. But they were about 25 or 30 minutes into a meeting that was going very congenially when Zelensky started pushing the buttons. I think it was intended.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:32 is time. Very good morning. If you just joined me, it's me, James Max, with you until 10 o'clock here on Talk, when Peter Cardwell will be here. Just referring to some of your texts, Trump, Farage, Le Pen, says Anna in Surrey, will romp to power for decades off the back of the majority being trashed for the minority. I refuse to deal with entitled people from the Asian continent who get far too comfortable in speaking to me like I was dirt. Oh dear, Anna. I don't know, I think it sounds like you got up wrong side of the bed this morning. I do not agree with funding an endless war with my hard-earned tax. I want it to go to my country, says Jane in Doncaster. And James, a simple answer, says Andy. UK's priorities should always be the UK and its citizens first. Look after the people and the people will look after you. Destroy the people like Labour are doing and they will destroy you. Starmer is a bunch of clowns are destroying our country and putting its citizens second. That's a dangerous path. And that out of that comes unrest and mistrust. Andy, thank you for that. Plenty more messages to come. 0344 499 1000 to give me a call. You can text 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And you can tweet, X, whatever you want to call it, at talkTV, at the James Max. Meanwhile, last night, the O2, a music ceremony took place, and I know we talked about it a bit and various things. However, we thought we'd like to find somebody who was actually there, so we have. Talia Storm is a singer and songwriter who was at the Brit Awards last night, and she's joined me now. Oh, I think she might have some new music out. We'll talk about that in a minute. Talia, good morning.
Good morning, you.
So, very good, thank you. So, you were at the Brit Awards last night, which, given that you're here this morning, I don't think you did the Brits properly. Unless you haven't been to sleep yet.
I'm really scared to look at the camera, so we're gonna talk, and I'm not gonna look because I've not had enough sleep for this. But you know what? I'm here, and I made a pact with my friend. He was staying at my house. I was like, look, if we stay, we're going to this together. Woke up this morning. I'm like, we've got to get up. Like 2 hours sleep. No, 2 hours. I'm here. Okay, no, that's good. Well done to you. I mean, music industry, like anything else, you got to work hard, play hard. Yeah. That's what you got to do. So, Brit Awards, had you been before, or was last night the first time? Yeah, I'd actually been a few times before, but I feel like every year it's really different. Even like the layout of like the red carpet, they change it every year, so it's always like a different vibe, different energy. But it felt really special. Who was the guy who turned up with all the soft toys all over him? Teddy Swims. Yeah, Teddy Swims. I mean, I'm not necessarily a fan. Maybe he doesn't aim his music at me. I mean, it was an intentional grammar, and I guess it worked because I'm talking about him. Yeah, no, I love him. He's brilliant. He's actually a fantastic singer. He was top of the charts for this year and last year. He just kind of broke in. I think he's brilliant. Right. And I think that's the whole point of the Brits. If you show up boring, then we're not talking about you and we don't care. Okay. The person that we are talking about today is Charlie XCX. Yes, she's been around for a while, but she did walk off with 5 Brit Awards, so that's pretty good. I mean, were people... I mean, after she won like 3, were people like, yawn? Or were they like, oh, great, she's the big winner this year, right? I think Ray set the tone last year for, like, woman coming up, saying that it doesn't actually happen overnight, which I feel like these 2 women who are my favourites represent. So Charlie XCX, she started like 12 years ago, and now she's only getting her moment. She spoke about this in her speech last night, saying like, hang on a minute, I might look like I'm here now, but this has actually been a very long time in the making. So I feel like I was very ready for her to win all these awards. Long time in the making. I've been doing this speech radio for 20 years. I've been working for 35 years. I mean, it's just like, but the problem in music is that people act like women, especially, have an expiry date. You know, you can be Justin Timberlake and keep on going, but, you know, by the time you get to 32, 33, people look at you different. They're like, well, where are your kids? Lulu's been going for years. She's had it. And look at Kylie. She had top hits. So, Kylie Minogue, fastest selling act for any gig at the Royal Albert Hall. Where they also had Ray, by the way, which sold extremely well, obviously sold out. Incredible artists from all different kinds of music. Kylie Minogue, fastest seller, and she's had a hit in every decade since the 80s. So I actually interviewed Kylie. I hosted the breakfast show in Capital in Scotland, and when it comes to women, she had to make a comeback, and obviously Padam Badam broke the chart. She said she wasn't expecting it, but the difference is men don't have to make a comeback because they never leave, whereas like women, it's this constant battle of like, hi guys, I'm back, look at me, look what I've done now. You see, here's the problem. Here we go. We've had such a load of bore off, and anybody who knows me will know that I've actually employed lots of people from all sorts of different backgrounds and ages, and I've had female bosses and male bosses and everything else. And I'm all up for ensuring that we have proper, I don't know, routes to success for any kind of background. I don't care where you come from. But I think this whole, you know, female domination thing is no better than when it was male domination. Surely what we need to do is you need to have people who get through because they have genuine talent. So Charlie XCX, incredible talent, fantastic, she's there. Ray, incredible talent, she's there. But we have
at the moment you have a look at the charts, and I would actually say that there is a dearth of male talent, and it's partly because there's been such a focus on ensuring that, you know, our female talent gets through in the same way that I think it's absolutely right. I mean, I love to see acts that are still there. I mean, I was at the, you know, hall last week, and we had, you know, one of the Pointer Sisters who was there still slaying it at, you know,
Slaying
80.
it.
There we go.
You tell them.
68 or however, it's incredible. And it's just like, hello, you know, we shouldn't be sort of getting rid of people just because they got to a certain age. And I do understand that historically, you know, it was that women have a certain sell-by date and men can go on forever, and we saw it in the news industry, we saw it in the broadcast industry. I think a lot of that has gone, but if we're not careful, the pendulum switches too
Well,
far.
you know, I actually like your point, but at the end of the day, that charts
You're
are still
never going to agree with me.
80% men, and you know that's not necessarily because, you know, we're just listening to men. I love listening to women, but the problem is that, you know, arenas, tour dates, you know, I get it. I'll never forget a record exec looking at me and being like, yeah, but you know,
But look at Tay-Tay. Look at Tay-Tay. How much money? How can somebody from producing mediocre pop hits come out with $1 billion?
No, but I'll tell you, it's this simple. Women cost money because they look at us and they go, oh, well, we need a makeup artist for you, we need a hairdresser, we need a stylist. Whereas a man rocks up. My brother's a DJ, he's doing well right now. He's in Italy right now. What did he go on? He got on his own because agents know they can send him on a plane and he's performing, no issues. Whereas we look like baggage. But trust me, I'm still backing me.
Okay, she agreed with my point, but then she still had to go off on one. Now, you're going off on one and you've woken up early because I'm assuming that you must have something to sell. Oh, there's some new music. Now, I can't say what the name of the song is because you've gone and used... I mean, you having come from a radio background, frankly, you should have known better because you dropped the F-bomb in it.
Well, the fact I've come from a radio background, I think this makes us slightly iconic.
Oh, okay.
Personally.
Explain the music to us. So what's it? We can't say the name.
So I've rebranded the song. I'm going to call it a Fun Boy.
Fun Boy.
Fun Boy.
And you can, I mean, two of the letters are the same, so that's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Fun Boy. So despite all this, like women, you know, all this stuff, you're actually writing about the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not trying to pretend they're not here. We need men the same way men need us. But I'm still going to remind you of what we bring to the table. But
Many things.
But what are you bringing to the table? That's what this song is about.
Oh, very little. I'm just bringing, you know, relief cover for somebody who's ill. I mean, that's all I'm doing. I was turning up. I mean, at least I woke up and got here on time. So
you know what? It's a
I
good
did that.
start. It's a good start.
It's a good start. Okay, so the music is released when, and what's the vibe? What's the style?
Friday. So I went out to LA. I had a dream in a suitcase, and I've been joking about this with my friends forever, but I manifested this basically, and I got to work with my favourite producer called Camper, he's just done Flow Girlies, who were nominated last night. I was rooting for them, but they didn't win. And I did a whole EP, and it's the first song from the EP, and it's just me in my R&B era of like, you know what, I actually don't care about the outcome. Like, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. And I feel like when you get to that certain age, I'm 26, but I've been doing this a long time. You know, I got discovered by Elton John when I was 13. You know,
26, I can try to think what the heck I was doing. I had a real job when I was 26.
This is a real job, darling, don't worry.
No, this isn't. No. The music industry is a lot of fun, but I think it's one of those things, very similar to sports industry, which if you're not careful, it can be looks-based and therefore isn't necessarily driven on the talent side of things or the musicality, or you can just get sort of lost in it. And it's a hard business. I mean, music, when you're touring around and you're doing live date after live date and you're in different places and you're touring around, you know, people say, oh, it's glamorous. No, it's actually quite not.
I think it's definitely a real job, and I think people underestimate the music industry because it's a business. You know, every one of my friends who've made it in the music industry are businesswomen, and I look at myself as an entrepreneur. It's like, what can I do to keep myself going, keep myself afloat, to get to that point, to get to your Sabrina Carpenter, to O2 Arena, to get on your flight to Los Angeles. So I think when you look at it that way and be like, okay.
Okay, so has the career gone well enough that when you get on that plane to Los Angeles, are you turning left or right?
No, I'm always turning in. I'm going economy because I'm an icon.
She's going icon.
And I'm vlogging it. I'm putting it on TikTok and then making money from it. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel.
So in terms of discovery, so when people are thinking about, okay, I want to listen to Talia's new music and all that sort of business, who discovered you?
Elton John. So I passed my demo tape to David Furnish when I was 13, and Elton phoned my mobile 24 hours later being like, would you like to open my concert over here?
And the rest, as they say, is history.
That's what I'm saying. I'm a hustler. I'm still here. Do you know what I mean? So, like, yes, I look like this, but you know what? We had a great night in the Brits.
So there you go. Great night at the Brits. Good fun. I mean, I have been to the Brits a few times.
And how was it?
I can't remember all of it. I think the best one was when I think I got home half an hour before I had to get up and go to work, and I just did a quick turnaround. I was quite a lot younger at the time and able to do that sort of thing.
Perfect.
I think now, no.
Perfect.
So, when's the new single out?
Friday.
Friday.
It's going to be out everywhere, and I can't wait for this new era. So hopefully you'll be...
And it's called Fun Boy?
Fun Boy. You'll be driving home in your car, bopping to my song out next Friday, and then life's a sleigh.
You never know what could happen. You never know the musicality that exists. I'm going to a shed somewhere later in the week. I'm going to a shed in Islington, I think, to go and listen to a French dance music act.
Good for you.
Which I think is I think it's, you know, I need to get out and experience that new music. So next Friday I'll be experiencing yours, Talia Storm, singer-songwriter. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning here on Talk. Much appreciated. Meanwhile, I promise, I did say that we come back to your calls, and I'm going to do that next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:45 is the time. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. Don't forget at 10, it's Peter Cardwell with all the big political stories of the day. Meanwhile, back to your calls, where we've been talking about, well, when it comes to looking at the events of the last week, and I think as we try and analyse some of the things which have been going on, the events in the US and the Ukraine, where should the UK's priorities lie? Because I think there are mixed allegiances. Some of you taking the view that actually should we really be providing more money to Ukraine when there are so many problems at home? But then the alternative is, well, hang on a second. If you are not going to deal with the safety of a fellow country in Europe, then you could see the toppling of various things. And we all saw what happened some years ago when that was allowed to proliferate. So peace is expensive to maintain. It's rather like, as I was discussing yesterday, if you buy a house, what's the first thing you do? Do you fill the larder? Do you buy insurance? You buy insurance. And defence spending is buying your insurance. But after all the events with the US, Ukraine, I'm asking where should the UK's priorities lie? But I'm also asking how has Keir Starmer done? Because, you know, as I was speaking to the associate editor of the Telegraph just before, and he was saying, look, actually, Keir Starmer's had a good week. I mean, well, so you may or may not disagree with certain things. I mean, he had good meetings with Trump. He's had good meetings with Zelensky. He's having good meetings with European leaders. Maybe just think he's a fraud and selling out. Gordon is in Sutton. Gordon, hello.
Good morning, James. Thank you for taking my call.
Thank you for calling, Gordon. So, what can you tell me?
Nice show as usual. Well, referencing the comments you just made about what's actually going on in the world, Russia, Ukraine, ourselves. My issue is very simple. I understand there's a problem with Ukraine and Russia, but what I don't quite understand is why Mr. Starmer and his woeful government don't prioritise the safety of British people and British borders. And once we've done that, then turn our eyes elsewhere. This is the bit I can't.
But the thing is that whilst I understand why you might conflate the argument in order to make your point, the reality is that you could spend money and do things today, because I'm assuming you're talking about the arrival of small boats. You could deal with that today. You should never deal with that in the same breath that you're talking about the defence of the nation. I know that some people say it's an invasion. It's a different kind of invasion. We're talking about what do you need to do to stop people with tanks and munitions, nuclear weapons and cyber warfare. That is a very different set of decisions and money expenditure compared to small boats which need to be stopped. I agree with your sentiment, because I think the flip side of that, Gordon, is that if you can't keep your borders safe and secure and know who's here and what they're doing, to a large extent, it's never going to be 100%, to a large extent, then that is going to be problematic. And I think that we've not heard from politicians of both the Labour Party now in power, the Conservative Party previously in power. We haven't heard from them on those points, and I think a lot of people up and down the nation are furious with the way that this country has either been changed or undermined, and the costs, and that our money isn't being spent on what it should be spent on.
James, I totally agree with your point, and you're quite right to maybe highlight the misgivings of my point. However, we could focus on these other issues, send our money, send our troops maybe, etc., etc., and we return home and it's not our country. It's been taken over from within. And no one is addressing these issues.
But isn't part of the issue also, when you talk about taking over from within, my father used to talk about taking over from within in a different context. He used to talk about it in the sense that as his generation either became less influential or less relevant and things started to happen in junior generations, he thought the country was being taken over because things that he thought were important in terms of certain kinds of behaviours or manners or ways of working or various other things were all changing. And so I think that is always going to be an issue because society changes. And I think it's also quite dangerous. If I look back at my history, you know, if it wasn't for immigration, I wouldn't be here. A lot of people will send me messages saying, oh, you're quite, you know, you're very English or British or traditional, or the way you speak, or the various things. It either shows that I've done a successful integration job, or alternatively, the values that I have are aligned with the values of a lot of people in the country. But I think there's a danger to say that, you know, anybody from overseas cannot be or will invade the country. Doesn't it mean that people need to have a better understanding of the values that we want people to have?
James, again, you make very valid points. But what I'm referring to from within, right? I presume, I may be wrong, I presume your family were from Eastern Europe.
Correct.
And probably Jewish.
Correct.
Right. I've never seen a Jewish person not integrate. I used to work for a Jewish-owned company who were fantastic and treated me with the utmost respect and gave me some fantastic opportunities. So I've never had an issue. I don't have issues with various other segments of immigrants that come to this country legally.
But 200 years ago, you see, there was that difference because Jewish people, whether it was integration or otherwise, and they were handed out the nation because of, you know, perhaps discussions about finances, and then they were handed out and then brought back in and all this sort of business. But I think you're right about the integration point, which is if people want to live in this country, I'm all up for people, you know, maintaining whether it's traditions or whether they be religious or otherwise. And you can do that alongside. But I think we have a really major problem in this country now. Maybe it's because it's the volume of people. I do expect people to speak English. I don't care if it's your second language, but I expect people to speak English. And I really dislike the amount of translation services that we're all having to pay for. And I do also expect people to behave in a certain way when it comes to respecting law of the land. If you want to challenge it, get elected, change it. Don't, you know, impose your own laws just because.
James, again, you're correct. I mean, I can only talk my own experience. I lived abroad in a specific country for 17 years. I always took the view I was a guest. I accepted the laws and the culture and lived within it and didn't try to impose me upon it. I was very welcome, had a very nice time.
It's just good manners to do that, isn't it, Gordon? In the same way, as you say, I mean, if, for example, I went to live in Italy, I'd still retain my Britishness, my English accent, all of those things. But I would make bloomin' well sure that I learnt how to speak Italian and what the customs were.
Well, I didn't learn to speak the language. I can speak a bit, but I'm not very good with languages. I will admit to that. But I did make the effort.
Yeah, well, you know, making the effort is part of the way. Gordon, thank you for that. We'll take some more of your calls in a mo here on Talk.
You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:56 is the time. Just time to perhaps take a quick call in a moment. James says, Jim in Cranbrook. Great show this morning. My wife reckons you put on a bit of timber since the early breakfast days. Is she right? No, Jim in Cranbrook. She isn't right. How very dare you. Charles is in Sussex. Charles, good morning.
Hi, good morning, James. How are you today?
I'm very good, thank you. Although I have come in for a bit of criticism about some of the things, and I've been told off about some of the stuff that I said. Somebody in particular, which I really need to find, has told me off about my criticism of some of the jingles for this show.
Oh well, don't get me started on jingles.
Well, jingle jangle.
To the point.
Yes.
Donald Trump. May agree with some of it, don't agree with all of it. His slogan is Make America Great Again, MAGA. Keir Starmer's is MBADM, which is Make Britain a Doormat.
Oh.
We have a £22 billion black hole until something comes along that he thinks will make him look good on the European stage, and then all of a sudden, money's no object. He wants to protect our young people until something that comes along, and then it will conscript them and send them all to die in Ukraine. Nobody's saying that the war in Ukraine isn't important to Ukraine and to Europe. We're not in Europe.
That's very true, but there's no reason why we shouldn't try and get on with our European neighbours. But I would take the view, and I would agree with you. I think, you know, the Europe thing is done, and we should move on from that.
Yep. The only thing I would say in respect of Starmer is, if Tony Blair was dead, I would now believe in reincarnation, because Starmer is Tony Blair II. He sits there and he...
No, he's not. No,
exactly what he does.
no, Charles. He's not Tony Blair II. Tony Blair was popular.
Oh, I'll give you that one.
And Tony Blair was a really interesting talker. Whether you liked him or not, Tony Blair was interesting at talking. But I must leave it there. Charles, thank you for that. Once again, I haven't got to all the messages, including the ones that tell me that, and I thought it was actually from David Bull, who indicated that I shouldn't be allowed back because I was so rude about some of the jingles. However, I'm not rude about my colleagues, including Peter Cardwell. I mean, maybe I could be just for a laugh. No. Peter, good morning.
Good morning, James. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed, thank you. Yeah, we survived another one. Been very busy, I know.
Well done, yes. What's happening this weekend?
Yeah, there is, which presumably leads me on to ask you, what's happening on your show?
Well, we're asking the question, should we cancel the state visit for Donald Trump? What do people think about that? It's a big weekend. There's a lot happening. There's a lot of leaders in town, including Zelensky, who was, of course, embraced by Keir Starmer yesterday. Interestingly, Kemi Badenoch this morning has said that her heart went out to him and she really felt sorry for him.